Now, it is time for day one of the Widowmaker tournament. Let's see who the first group to start this tournament off will be. It's the Mitsubishi Eclipse, the Engineering Edinus, the Corvette C6, and the 16 Angels. I feel like I'm probably mispronouncing Engineering's name, so if I am mispronouncing it, please let me know in the comments how to properly pronounce it in case they make it in the future. In this first race though, the Corvette C6 is out in front right now, and the Angels are trying to keep up with him. So far they are actually closing that gap a little bit. Will they be able to continue doing so? It looks like they will, as they are right hot on their tail at this point, and they're spinning the Corvette around, but it's not enough. And they go over that hill, and they manage to pass the Corvette and take the first win of the tournament. And we have a racer going upside down, stopping short of the finish line. But Engineering manages to push the Eclipse across. And you may have noticed as we got down towards the end of the track, this massive hill right near the end, this could be a big game changer for many racers. Some people may get nervous to drive too fast or lose control near the end. They might fly off the track if they're not careful. But regardless, it could throw a big wrench into some of these races in the future. I'm also worried that some racers who are too slow may not even get over that hill at all. But as we get into heat number 2, it's the 16 Angels who are currently in the lead, but they are starting in the back row this time. Each racer will start in each position at some point during these heats. So don't worry about racers getting a disadvantage or an advantage based on where they start, because each one will start in each spot. In heat number 2, it is the Corvette and the Mitsubishi Eclipse out in front right now, and the Eclipse is trying to pass the Corvette like the Angels did. So far unsuccessful. As we get over this hump though, it looks like they're successful as they manage to correct themselves after that bumpy landing, and they finish in first. And it looks like Corvette actually finished in third after all that. And I'm glad we have a camera focused on this specifically, because you can see just how much of a game changer it will become. I am certain of it. But it looks like the Eclipse may have our new fastest time already of a 17.99. I have a good feeling we'll get faster times later, but you gotta start somewhere. But now with that first place finish, the Mitsubishi Eclipse is out in front in terms of points. And they are starting in front this time in heat number 3. But as we get into the lane merger, that could change. But he goes around the outside and he manages to hold on to the lead, and he's trying to expand it as the race progresses. Getting around that turn, the other 3 are starting to fall behind, so it's the Mitsubishi Eclipse trying to maintain control. He is bouncing off the walls a little bit, which can be very bad in terms of trying to maintain a lead, because every hit off the wall can slow you down significantly. They get over the hill, they do slide sideways, and Engineering manages to pass him, and Mitsubishi Eclipse manages to hold on to second place, and the other 2 racers fall just short. That is about the closest you can get without finishing at all, particularly with the Corvette, and the Angels stops right in front of them, right behind them rather. But regardless, neither one of them finished, so neither one of them will get any points. The Mitsubishi stopped partly, but then they got nudged forward by the other 2, and Engineering managed to do a very seamless drive around to get around Mitsubishi and take the lead and the win in that race. And Engineering definitely needed something like that, because not only did they finish in first, but 2 of the racers that were in front of them did not finish at all, so now they have a good shot to move on. That being said though, they are in dead last right now, so they will need something to happen here in order to keep their chance alive. Right now, Mitsubishi Eclipse is back out in front, and the Corvette and the Angels are staying relatively close together. And now the Eclipse is about to approach that hump. Can he stay on his feet this time? No! He skids upside down, stops right before the finish line. It looked like the timer was still counting, so he didn't finish initially. But once again, a racer got nudged forward, and this time it was the Eclipse who took the win in that race, so it looks like he will move on. And I'm not entirely sure who is going to be joining them. Because this guy who got a lucky break in that last race, he finished in, I think, last. Let's take a closer look at that. Mitsubishi Eclipse does finish in first. I think the other two did finish. I'm not sure about the Corvette from that angle. Yeah, everybody did finish, but I guess Engineering had enough points that he will join Mitsubishi in today's finals. Now here comes the second group, which has the Audacious, the Ford Shelby, the Stingray, and the DeLorean. If there are any Back to the Future fans out there, tell me which Back to the Future movie is your favorite one and why. But for now, we'll get into this race, which has the Stingray currently out in front, while the other three are staying relatively close together, not too far behind. It looks like they are managing to close the gap a little bit, because the Stingray is constantly pinballing off the walls. And like I said a moment ago, every bounce off the walls can cause you to slow down, giving the other racers an upper hand. In fact, they are not moving that fast at all right now. Will they be able to get over that hill? Yes, they will. And they do manage to get the first win of this group. And it looks like the DeLorean will be finishing in second place. Let's see what happens as each of the racers pass over that hill. Looked like he was able to stay on the track for the most part. I don't think anybody really went that airborne. In terms of time, though, they did finish with a 19.84. That is definitely not the fastest time we've seen so far. But they did finish in first, and right now that is all that matters. Into heat number 2, the two set up in front are the Stingray, and I believe that's the Ford Shelby. Right now the Stingray is trying to stick his nose out in front so he can hold on to the lead as the lanes merge together, and that's exactly what he does. That seems to be an important element right now. If you start in one of the front two positions, if you can get your nose out in front, that could help you significantly. But right now the Stingray is trying to fight off the Ford Shelby and the Audacious. The Ford Shelby is trying to pass him, but goes diagonal, loses a lot of speed. Audacious manages to pass him, and the Stingray does go airborne for a moment, but manages to get back on his feet and keep going, and the Audacious finishes in second, the Ford Shelby in third, and the DeLorean in last. Look at this, he does manage to go airborne, but he doesn't really spin around. Those two managed to stay on their feet, not going too far into the air, and the DeLorean, I really don't think went airborne whatsoever. This was a bit of a closer race overall, so maybe we'll see some crazy finishes still. Right now, though, in terms of points, the Stingray has 2 wins under their belt. They just need 1 to automatically move on to at least today's finals, and greatly increasing the confidence and possibly moving on to the grand finals. But that being said, they are way back in last right now, and they've lost so much of a position, but the DeLorean managed to almost get stuck on that turn. They might have gotten completely stuck, actually. But no, they actually managed to get back on their wheels and keep going. But right now, it's the Ford Shelby and the Audacious fighting for first place. The Ford Shelby does have the lead, but he spun around after landing over that hill, and the Audacious vehicle managed to take the win that time. Who will finish in third and fourth? It looks like nobody will. Both of them got stuck on the last turn before that hill. And I guess the DeLorean figured if he's not going to finish, he's going to stop this other one from finishing too. And look at that. The Ford Shelby actually almost went off track. Their wheels went over the railing for a second. And I'm sure that was a massive speed loss there. But because the other 2 racers didn't finish, the fact that these other two did, is a massive help to them. And the Stingray is no longer undefeated, and it's not guaranteed now that they will be moving on. The Audacious is currently in the lead, followed closely by the DeLorean. If the DeLorean can finish well enough, he might still be able to move on, but it's hard to tell at the moment. But the Audacious is currently holding on to the lead. The DeLorean manages to catch up to him, and he's trying to pass him. Will he be able to? It looks like he will, but they're moving so slowly now. They still managed to get over that hump, thankfully. And the DeLorean finished in first that time, and the Stingray in second. I'm not sure if that first place finish is going to be enough for the DeLorean, though. We'll have to check the points in a second here. But it looked like everybody except for the Ford Shelby managed to stay on their feet going over that hill. I should say wheels instead of feet, but hey. It was not enough for the DeLorean. The Audacious and the Stingray are moving on to the finals. We've definitely had some close calls already in terms of this group. Or both groups, rather. And now these four, who are very similar in color, actually, are all racing together in today's finals. And the top two will be moving on to the grand finals, which will happen much further down the line. Right now, it is the Mitsubishi Eclipse in the lead right now. And I don't know about you guys, but as of recording this, the total eclipse of the moon passing over the sun is happening very soon where I am. So I'm very excited for that, so maybe I'm rooting for the eclipse a little bit just for that. And they do get the first win of today's finals, finishing with a 17.7, not bad. And then the Stingray comes out of nowhere and at least manages to finish. Even if you get 1 point, that is certainly better than 0. And it looked like some of these racers were bouncing off the railing of the track just like they were before. But it looked like everyone was able to at least keep from spinning sideways too much. That is going to be a key element in terms of the last few inches before the finish line. Is that if you can stay straight, that could ultimately save you if somebody else is in front of you but they start skidding sideways. Right now the Mitsubishi Eclipse does have the first win. They are starting in the back too, but they are nudging forward, trying to at least get second. So far unable to do so, as the engineering, I believe, is stopping them from doing so. And now the Eclipse is actually in last, as Audacious is out in front. And they are trying to expand that lead while the other two are fighting. The other three, rather. But they did lose a bit of speed, so the other three are trying to catch up right now. They're getting very close, and the Mitsubishi Eclipse is coming out of nowhere, trying to take the lead back, so far unable to. And they are trying to block the other racers. I am not sure who finished in what position there. That is the definition of an exciting, nail-biting, close race. It's not every day all four finish around the same time. We'll have to see. It looks like the Stingray managed to get the win that time. Audacious finishing in second, Engineering in third, and the Mitsubishi Eclipse finishing in last. So now we have 3 racers tied with 6 points each. Engineering only has 4, but the fact that the other 3 have 6, his chances are still relatively good. Not promising, but still a possibility to move on, because it is the top 2, remember. The Audacious is out in front once again, but so far he is struggling to maintain a decent lead, and now the Eclipse is coming back for more. Going around that last turn, the Mitsubishi Eclipse is trying to find some way to pass him, and the Audacious managed to grind on the rail for a little bit. He didn't fly off the track, but he definitely had some style, finishing in first there. Take a look at this launch. He went way over into the air, actually bounced off both walls, I think, and the Audacious did grind a little bit, but it wasn't enough to lose speed to the point other racers would pass them. So that is a big help to them, and the Mitsubishi Eclipse did finish in second. So now, the favorite tips for Mitsubishi Eclipse, and I believe the Audacious. But the points are still relatively close. The Stingray could still pull something off here. I'm not sure about Engineering, though. But at the beginning of this race, the Eclipse is already in front of Audacious, which he had trouble doing before. And now that lead is beginning to expand. They get around this turn, they are not slowing down much. They are able to keep in relative control as they approach this hill. and they go way into the air, but they manage to quickly get stable and finish in first, so it looks like the Eclipse will be moving on along with Audacious. Valiant efforts all around, but only two could move on, and now we know who those two will be. A beautiful airborne moment, and the Audacious keeps closer to the ground that time, same with the other two. And they finished with a 16.87. That might be the fastest time. I'd have to go back and double check just to be sure. But finishing under 17 seconds right now is a good sign. The Mitsubishi Eclipse and the Audacious fill up the first two spots of the Grand Final. Day 2 of the Widowmaker Tournament shall begin. The first group for today includes the What42, the Ford Shelby, Honda Civic, and the Nissan Titan. I believe we had a Ford Shelby in day 1, so we already have a repeat, it seems. And that Nissan Titan seems to be pretty low to the ground. I'm surprised that vehicle is not somehow scraping along the track the entire time they're going, and for whatever reason, that design may actually be helping them because they are out in front, and they have a decent sized lead. So far they are struggling to keep straight. They are bouncing off the walls, fishtailing a little bit, and the other racers are trying to catch up, and it looks like they are. Here comes the Ford Shelby trying to pass them around that turn, and as they get to the massive bump, so far the Nissan Titan actually holds on to the lead. They don't have the fastest time, not even close. Right now, the fastest time is held by the Mitsubishi Eclipse, who did move on to the Grand Finals in the last video. Yeah, if you finish above 20 seconds, it seems, in this tournament, you're in trouble in the future, even if you do win. But for now, Nissan Titan does have the lead in points. And they are starting in the back this time, but look at this, they're already managing to get towards second place at least, and they did manage to grab it. So even if you do start in the back, you still have a good chance around that first turn to make something happen to give you an advantage. And right now they are blocking the other two while they're trying to catch up to the Ford Shelby. Before it was the Ford Shelby trying to catch up to him, but now it's the other way around, and the gap is being closed, and the Nissan Titan manages to grab the lead. They go over the massive hill, and he holds on to that lead, staying in first. Of all the racers in this group, this was not the one I expected to do well, at least compared to the other racers around them. But I guess the way that car's designed, especially going over that hill, they might have an advantage I didn't think of initially. Because sometimes going airborne could look cool, but it might also slow you down after you land. So if you can stay relatively close to the track itself, that may actually help you overall. And right now, total points in terms of position could actually be better than style points. If you can manage both, then good for you, but I personally would not risk it. I'm not that good of a driver. But right now the Ford Shelby is out in front. The What42 is actually on his tail this time, while the Honda Civic and the Nissan Titan are fighting for third. The Ford Shelby actually started grinding along the rail for a second as they went around the turn, but they managed to correct themselves and are staying straight, and they are currently blocking What42 from passing them. They are struggling a little bit, and the What42 manages to pass them after going over that hill. And the Honda Civic manages to finish in third, so the Nissan Titan streak is cut short already. And so far, I don't think anybody's gotten the fastest time yet from Mitsubishi Eclipse. They were kind of going diagonal over that hill there. The Nissan Titan, while they managed to stay on the surface of the track, they were already far enough behind that it just did not matter. So now things have gotten a little bit more interesting, given that the first place person finished in last that time. Into heat number 4, let's look at the point totals again. Honda Civic only has 4, Nissan Titan has 11. What42 now has 10, and the Ford Shelby has 8. The What42 seems to have been biding his time until now, And now they do have the lead. The Nissan Titan is trying to keep up with him, bumping him forward a little bit, trying to spin him around. So far unsuccessful. And the What For 2 did have the lead until the Nissan Titan found a way to pass him through an opening. And now the What For 2 is trying to do the same. So far is unable to. And they get around that last turn before the hill. The Nissan Titan goes up and back down without much of an issue. And the What For 2 spins around, goes sideways, loses so much speed. Will anyone be able to pass him? It looked like the Ford Shelby did, but the Honda Civic lost enough speed to the point where they didn't finish at all. Not the way you want to go out, to be certain. But I think it'll be the Nissan Titan and the What For 2 moving on, but we'll have to double check the scores. Look at this, he was doing so well and then he stopped completely. And it took so long for the other racers to get there. And the What For 2 was not happy, so he used his position to stop Honda Civic from finishing. And it will be the What For 2 joining the Nissan Titan in the finals. In the second group we have the Bully Goat, the Ford Mustang, the 59 Firebird, and the Honda Spocket. The Spocket is not a type of vehicle I'm personally too familiar with, but I'm also not a big car person in terms of how knowledgeable I am. So maybe it's a relatively new one, maybe it's not. I don't know. For now though, it's the Firebird out in front, and I think not too long ago we had a Firebird win a tournament, and they had some funky design on the side too. But right now they are in the lead. The other three are fighting for second place way back there. And the Firebird actually flips over as they go around that last turn. I was at a loss for words for a second, and we actually have two people upside down. One of them manages to finish in first, and the other, who was in the lead for the most part, flipped over before they even got to the last hill. Somehow, going around that last turn before the hill, they flipped themselves over, and they still had enough speed to get up to the top of the hill, but they needed a push forward to keep going, but even then it wasn't enough. I feel like it's going to be extremely rare, for people to stop on that big hill, but we just showed that it's definitely possible, to say the least. But that time we only had two finishers, so it's definitely going to be helpful for them. Into heat number 2, the Firebird and the Ford Mustang start in the first two positions, but the Firebird is quickly losing that advantage, and now they're already in third as the Ford Mustang and the Bully Goat. Actually, no, that's the Honda Spocket. What am I talking about? They are the two out in front, and the Honda Spocket is trying to hold the lead, but they almost lose it, and they do now. Now it's the Ford Mustang out in front. The Honda Spocket is trying to chase him back down as they get around that last turn before the hill. And they go up the hill. Both of them stay relatively on their feet, but the Honda Spocket did do a little bit of bouncing, preventing any chance from getting in third. And now we have another person who stopped short while going upside down. And it looks like the Firebird, while finishing up that upside down, at least managed to finish that time. They did manage to stay on their wheels before they got to the finish line, so that definitely helped them. But yeah, that hill is going to be a big game changer for a lot of racers. The Firebird could have nudged him forward and almost did, but he managed to work around him and finish in third. So far, the way these points have been sorted out, it could still be anybody's game. Because right now, the most points anyone has is the Honda Spocket with 6, finishing in second both times. And sometimes that's all you need, even if you don't finish in first ever. If you're more consistent than anybody else, that could still give you the edge you need in order to move on. But right now, it is really anybody's game, and right now Ford Mustang is back out in front. So far, no one even close to them. As they go up the hill and back down, they went airborne, but they managed to get back on their wheels, and they almost lost control near the end, but they had enough momentum going forward to be able to finish in first. Meanwhile, the Honda Spocket does finish in second yet again, So props to them for consistency, at least. And once again, the Firebird ended up on their backs. I think the driver of the Firebird might have had a little too much to drink. Because it's like no matter how much they do, no matter how much racing they do, no matter how well they start, somehow, at least half the time, they end up on their backs. And this time, they somehow managed to do that much further up the track. They might have to check them for what's in their system, because if they drank too much, that could affect how they have been driving in this race so far. The Firebird has not finished twice. They are pretty much out at this point. But in terms of points, I think the Sprocket is now actually in second. But the fact is, they've been consistent so far. If they can stay that way, they will still move on regardless of the fact that they haven't finished in first yet. So far, everybody is out in front. I'm not sure what happened to the Firebird. They started off so well, and then they just fell apart, and it looks like the Bully Goat also ended up upside down this time. And now the Firebird is trying to make something happen, taking advantage of that situation, but I don't think it's going to be enough, regardless of what happens. The Sprocket now ends up on their back. They tried to finish. I think that's going to count. I'm not entirely sure. But is anyone else going to finish? Here comes the Firebird. And if the Sprocket wasn't going to finish before, they certainly will now. But as you saw, the Bully Goat, as they started going down that hill, that slope rather, they somehow wound up on their back and they will not finish. I feel like we're going to see a lot of people ending up on their backs at least somewhere on the track, most likely after they go over that hill. But look, it took so long for the Firebird to get there, which is surprising. They seemed promising near the beginning, but they just lost all that after they didn't finish. I don't think anybody has been able to take the fastest time so far. But as long as they move on, they will have more opportunities later. And the ones moving on will be the Ford Mustang and the Honda Sprocket. Again, consistency can sometimes trump finishing in first, as long as they don't finish in first every time. But here we go into today's finals, which has the What For 2, the Nissan Titan, the Ford Mustang, and the Honda Sprocket. So far, the surprise racer to me is the Nissan Titan, because it just seems like they're so low to the ground that they would lose so much momentum, because it looks to me like they should be scraping off the surface of the track the entire time. But here they are out in front yet again. But now all four racers are staying relatively close together. So it could still be anybody's game. The Honda Sprocket is trying to find his way around the Nissan Titan. Something could happen as they go around this hill, and the Sprocket gets flipped over, and the Nissan Titan takes off and takes the win. And What For 2 barely finishes, while the Sprocket, having consistency up until now, does not finish in the first race of the finals for today. A massive blow to their streak. But sometimes that hill will give somebody further behind exactly what they need in order to up their chances. And that's exactly what happened here. So far, the Nissan Titan does have the first place finish. So far, we've had no undefeated racers. We've gotten one or two that were close, but close does not get the job done. Right now in this second race, it is the What For 2 and the Honda Sprocket out in front. And they take full advantage of that, and they try to expand their lead. So far, they're kind of chasing after each other a little bit. And the What For 2 is trying to make something happen, but so far, that gap seems to be gradually widening. And the Sprocket is trying to make up for lost time and position from before. And they're approaching the hill. Can they stay on their feet this time? They almost didn't, but they managed to flip themselves back over, get back on their wheels, and finish in first. If you can get style points and the lead points, props to you. And that's exactly what the Honda Sprocket did, and that's exactly what they needed. They needed a first place finish. The other three managed to stay on their feet, I believe, not even flipping over to begin with. And the Nissan Titan finished in 4th that time. I'm telling you, some of these track elements can really shake things up later on down in the tournament. And so far, despite finishing in last, the Nissan Titan still does have the lead. But the Honda Spocket, finishing in 1st that time, already gets up into 2nd. Tied with the Ford. Actually, now that I look at it more, the Nissan Titan does have the lead with 6, but everyone else is right behind him with 5. This is still very much anybody's game, and now the Ford Mustang is out in front. And who's behind him? It looks like it's the Honda Spocket, trying to stay on his wheels. It looked like he was shaking a little bit. The Ford Mustang goes into the final turn, now approaching the hill. They manage to keep from going airborne too much, and they take the win. And who finishes in 2nd? It's the Spocket. And the Nissan Titan rocketed into the finish line, but they still only finished in 3rd. And not too much air there. Honda Spocket got a little bit kind of grinded over the railing there for a moment. And the Watt 42 was bouncing around like a bouncy ball. And the Ford Mustang finished with a 17.5. Still not quite the fastest time we've had. I think only one racer has been able to break that 17-second mark, and that was the Mitsubishi Eclipse. Here we go, the final race for today. So far, I believe the one out in front in points is the Ford Mustang with 10. The Nissan Titan currently has 8, along with the Honda Spocket actually, and the Watt 42 only has 6. The Watt 42 has some major work to do if they want to keep in this tournament. Well, right now it's the Honda Spocket and the Nissan Titan fighting for 2nd place, so whoever finishes in front of the other could be the one moving on. And the Ford Mustang, despite getting so much air, easily managed to correct themselves, or rather stabilize themselves, I should say, and they finished in 1st. The Watt 42 does finish in 2nd. I'm not sure it's going to be enough, though. And the Nissan Titan finishes in 3rd, and the Spocket in 4th. So if the Watt 42 does not finish, or does not move on, despite a 2nd place finish, it looks like the Nissan Titan will be moving on. Definitely a surprise. We will definitely check the points again in a moment. Yeah, they definitely kept stable over that hill for the most part. And it looks like we have our new fastest time. A 16.7656 by the Ford Mustang. The record has been broken, and now we have a new leader. Yep, it will be the Nissan Titan moving on. The other racers got very close. But again, close doesn't get the job done. Welcome to day number 3 of the Widowmaker Tournament. We've had some wacky events happen already, a lot of which involved that bump near the end of the track. And let's see the first group for today that will tackle it. The Ford Shelby, the Batmobile, the Plymouth, and the 65 Mustang. Here we go! The two in front will, for now, be the 65 Mustang and the Plymouth. Right now, though, it is the Mustang that is out in front with the Batmobile not too far behind them. Just because you start in front doesn't mean you'll stay that way. That first lane in the first turn can change absolutely everything, and the Batmobile is trying to pass the Mustang, so far is unable to do so. They go around that turn, and the Mustang is trying to get that gap to widen, but instead it flips as the Batmobile now has the lead. They go into the last turn. What will happen as they go over this bump? The Batmobile, and the Mustang for that matter, stay close to the ground, and the Batmobile takes the lead. We'll have to see what time they get in a second. Here come the Plymouth and the Shelby. An 18.5, that is not quite the fastest time. The fastest time we've had so far was done by the Ford Mustang in the last video with a time of 16.7656. But for now, this particular part of the track is gonna flip a lot of people, both figuratively and literally. We've seen people, they will start out strong, but once they get to that part of the track, they will flip over, start sliding down the track on their backs, and they might end up in last for all they know. Just because you're in first until near the end, as they say, it is not over until it's over. And the Batmobile, I should say, currently has the first win, so that puts them in a much better position, and they will start out in front in this leg, with the Mustang not too far behind them, and once again they are taking a bit of a lead, and they pass in front of the other two. And it seems like these two are relatively evenly matched, as are the other two with each other. And because the Batmobile is already out in front, he might have a slightly easier time as he goes further down the track. And the Mustang actually loses a bit of ground, bouncing off the walls a little bit, but so does the Batmobile. The Batmobile does go airborne. He flips onto his back, like I said might happen, and the Mustang passes him, spins around, but manages to finish, allowing him to take first place, and the Batmobile does not finish unless he gets nudged far enough forward, but that is not going to happen. The Ford Shelby finished in second, and they are the only two that will finish. The Plymouth stopped just short, and the Batmobile could not stay on its wheels. I was just talking about how this kind of thing can happen, and lo and behold, that's exactly what happened. Let's take another look. He was okay until he hit the downward slope, and then he flipped over and could not correct it. Some vehicles have done that, but not so far the Batmobile. And then here come these two. As they go up the hill, they have just the right amount of speed to where they stay on the ground, which may actually be the better strategy overall. But with that, the Batmobile is already stopped from staying undefeated. Speaking of which, so far we actually have had no racers be undefeated, at least up to this point. Some of them have gotten pretty close, but obviously pretty close is not completely. And this is kind of surprising, because usually by now, in the first day or two, we have at least one racer that finishes undefeated, but not yet. As we get into this third race, though, once again, the Batmobile and the Mustang are out in front. And they're staying relatively close together, but that could change. It seems like when the Batmobile is in front, he is able to widen that gap. The Mustang struggles to do that a little bit. And that gap is in fact widening, although Batmobile did lose a little bit of speed there. He goes over the hill, is able to stay on his wheels this time, and because of that, he was able to stay in front and finish. But the 65 Mustang wasn't so lucky, and the Ford Shelby once again takes advantage and finishes in second. He actually knocks the Mustang off the track. That is a bit of a dirty move. If nothing else, that is definitely salt on the wound, but I'm sure there are a lot of Mustang fans that will not be happy to see that. That is just poor sportsmanship, if nothing else. And someone could get critically injured, or worse, let's just say it could be fatal. Here comes the Plymouth, and once again they have just enough speed to get over that hill. I think we've had one or two racers so far. Oh, wait a minute, the Batmobile actually has the new fastest time. 15.6692. We've seen a lot of racers struggle to break 18 seconds or 17 seconds. The Batmobile broke 16 seconds. So even if he's not undefeated, the Batmobile at least now has the fastest time we've seen so far. Okay, here we go into the fourth race now. Right now, because of multiple non-finishes, this is still very much up in the air for some of these racers. And right now the Mustang is in front of the Batmobile, but that gap is so small they're practically touching. Around that turn though, the Mustang did get a little bit of an advantage and launch himself forward. The question is, will he be able to hold on to it as the Batmobile is creeping up behind him, trying to find a way around. So far unable to do so, and the Mustang is still out in front. Going over that hill, he stops the Batmobile temporarily, but he flips over. The Batmobile is backwards, but he's still on his feet, and he manages to have enough speed to finish in first, and the Shelby almost actually stole first place, but the Batmobile was able to stay in first, and the Ford Shelby 3 times in a row was able to take full advantage of somebody flipping over and passing them for second place. The question is, will it be enough? The Batmobile is moving on, it's just a matter of who is going to join them. That was a bit of a commotion between the Batmobile and the Mustang going over that hill. Like I said, you could be doing well up until that spot, and then suddenly everything gets flipped. Literally. Yeah, this was a much slower time, so I guess Batman had a lot of control in that last race to get a faster time by about 4 seconds compared to this one. The Plymouth wasn't able to get around the Mustang, so he doesn't finish either. And it is, in fact, the Ford Shelby who will be moving on. I know a lot of people don't like him because of the move he pulled on the Mustang earlier, but he is moving on. And in this group, we have the Acura, the Toyota, the Mustang, and the Vendetta. Some very cool sounding names here. And as we begin in the first race, it looks to be the Toyota and the Vendetta out in front right now. Although these four seem to be a little bit more even in terms of where they're placed. Because before it was like 2 pairs of 2. I guess that's kind of redundant, but you get the point. But now all 4 are relatively close together, at least to some degree. Almost evenly spaced, actually. But the Toyota is currently out in front as they approach that bump, and he does go airborne, but manages to quickly fix it. And the Vendetta almost catches up to him going backwards. And then Acura finishes in 4th. Let's take another look at these launches. These are going to be some of the most epic replays I'm sure we will have seen in a long time. He kind of pulled a bit of a James Bond thing where he launched into the air and started rotating, but he went back on his wheels, kind of grinded the rail for a second. But he was able to stay on his wheels, thus being able to finish in 1st. They did finish a little bit slower than some, but right now all you need to do is move on. Now, as we look at the totals, the Toyota is currently the one who has a chance at staying undefeated. If he does not do it, then we will go 3 consecutive videos right from the start where no one is undefeated. So far, the Toyota is right behind the Vendetta. In fact, he's almost pushing him along a little bit. And I'm sure now he wants to find a way to get around him. The question is, will he be able to do so? Vendetta is currently successful at blocking him, but the Toyota is trying to find his way around, going from side to side, trying to look for an opening. And the Vendetta is managing to block him, but he got spun around in the process. The Toyota is trying to stop him again. And now all 3 of these vehicles are in a jam. The Vendetta is back out in front, going over that hill. The Toyota is trying to find a way to pass him at the last moment, so far unable to. And the Vendetta manages to hold on to 1st. What a race! It looked like the Toyota had many opportunities to pass the Vendetta at various points on the track, and even if he passed in front of him for just a moment, the Vendetta found a way to stop it from happening. And it is now due to that we will now go 3 videos where no racers have not lost a single race. And we actually almost got into the 20-second area on that one. But now the Toyota and the Vendetta are tied for 1st with 8 points apiece. So the odds are definitely tipping in their favor right now, as the other racers only have 4 and 2 points, respectively. In this 3rd race, though, the Acura is quickly falling behind while the other 3 are staying relatively close together. But now the Toyota and the Vendetta are taking off, trying to get that gap to be much bigger between them and the other racers. And once again, we're in a very familiar scenario. The Toyota is trying to find a way to pass the Vendetta, but instead, it's the Mustang GT coming out of nowhere and passing both of them. They saw the scuffle, they saw an opening, and they took it. And they have the right amount of speed to stay on their feet, and they will barely finish in 1st. I was about to say they will, but they slowed so far down near the end that I wasn't sure. But take a look at this. They have just the right amount of speed to where they don't go too far into the air to the point where they might risk flipping over. And these other 2, who are really good up until now, their scuffle allowed for someone else to pass both of them. The Toyota was focusing so hard on the Vendetta, he forgot about the Mustang. An absolute crazy finish. One that I'm sure no one saw coming. And that definitely helps out the Mustang GT a little bit. If they can do that again, they might actually be moving on. And they are starting out in front, so they do have a slight edge here. And the Vendetta is pushing the Toyota along, and they are trying to get in front of that Mustang. but the Mustang actually gets between them and loses a little bit of momentum, and he slows down the Vendetta in the process. The Toyota, as a result, has a much bigger lead now, highly increasing their odds of moving on and placing in the top spot of these 4 racers. Here they go into the last turn. Will they be able to stay on their feet as they go up that hill? They do. In fact, that was a very clean jump. Even if they bounce a little bit, they didn't really flip or rotate much at all. And they finish in first. They will be moving on. And who's that in second? It's actually the Acura. The Acura managed to somehow finish in second. The Vendetta finished in third. And here comes the Mustang GT, whose hopes were brought to life after that third race, but are now dashed. A very valiant effort by the Acura. I don't think it's going to be enough, though. I believe the Vendetta will still be moving on along with that Toyota. We'll have to double check once we get through these replays. It looked like everyone was able to stay on their feet that time. In fact, 2 of them almost seemed magnetized to the track, as I don't think they went airborne at all. The Mustang was actually going backwards up to this point, and they also stayed completely attached to the track. A much better time of 17.59, though. And you can see the other racers coming up in the back. Actually, the Mustang GT, from the looks of things, almost got stopped on that last turn. But they still at least made an effort to finish, and they just barely did so. But will it be enough? No, they got close, but the Vendetta will still be moving on alongside the Toyota. And now for the finals of today. These 4 racers are definitely ones to keep an eye on. That Ford Shelby, even if they're not the fastest racer, they're still one of the smartest racers I've seen in recent memory. Where even if they don't start out well, they might find a window, they might take an advantage of it, and do much better than anyone might be anticipating. As we begin in this last group, though, it is the Batmobile once again out in front. He's not undefeated, but he currently does have the fastest time, and it looks to have the better odds of moving on. And we will remind you that the top 2 will be moving on for now, so even if someone doesn't finish in front of the Batmobile, there are others who will have a chance to move on. The Ford Shelby, once again, actually manages to finish in second. Another example of smart racing where they will position themselves, even when they're upside down, in such a way that they will be nudged forward across the finish line and stopping someone else in the process. I don't know if that's dirty racing, smart racing, or both, but they are absolutely crazy. The Ford Shelby, thinking he will not finish at all, still managed to finish in second in the end. Take a look at this. He's on his side, but he positions himself in just a way where the Vendetta blows through both vehicles, but only manages to push one of them forward, and he stops the Vendetta from finishing at all. The Vendetta and the Toyota, who did really well before, are now in much bigger trouble. Here we go into heat number 2. Things just really got turned on their heads. Right now, the Batmobile and the Toyota are in the front spots, but the Vendetta is quickly pushing the Batmobile along, trying to grab second place, so far unable to do so, and they lose momentum in the process, and now the Toyota is fighting with the Batmobile for first place. The Batmobile is putting in a lot of effort right now to not only stay in first, but block the Toyota from passing him, which I guess involves staying in first, but you get the idea. And now he goes up that hill, almost flips over, but manages to stay on his feet and finishes in first yet again. Now he just got to get one more to guarantee a spot in the grand finals. And he finished with a 16.99. I guess at this point I can say that anything below 17 seconds is very promising. Well, let's take another look. Batmobile goes up, shakes a lot, stays on his feet. The Toyota seemed to flip over, but I think he did manage to correct himself in the end. Vendetta stayed close to the ground. And as for our other friend, who's way back there, he did at least get over the hill, but he didn't have a lot of speed. He almost got slowed at the top of that hill, which is a rarity, but definitely possible. I'll have to check the standings again in just a moment, but I think the Ford Shelby has the best odds of moving on with the Batmobile right now. Actually, no, that was the Ford Shelby. What am I talking about? Yeah, they finished in last, and the Toyota finished in second. So in terms of overall points, the Batmobile does have the best edge right now. But all the other racers have so few points. The Ford Shelby does have 4, so they technically do have the best odds out of the other 3. But the Vendetta and Toyota have 2 and 3, so they could theoretically take that spot away. Right now, the Vendetta and the Toyota are fighting for first place, and the Batmobile is trying to play catch up. He's gotten right beside the Toyota, but the Toyota blocks him completely. And now they're all clamored together while the Vendetta takes advantage and goes way out in front of them, allowing him to get a win. And the Batmobile still at least manages to finish in second. Definitely not what anyone was expecting. It looked like the Batmobile was in a good position to get a sweep out of that, if nothing else. But that was denied by the Toyota blocking him for a good chunk of that stretch up there. That being said, the Batmobile did finish in second, and the Ford Shelby, who looked absolutely promising. It seemed all their luck was used on that first group they appeared in. Now all that luck seems to be running out, as well as their time in this tournament. But now the Batmobile has 11 points, and the Vendetta comes up in second place right now with 7. However, the Ford Shelby still has 5. So really, this is anyone's game right now. The Batmobile is definitely moving on. It's just a matter of who will join them. It could very well come down to who finishes in front of the others between those other 3. Right now, the Vendetta has the best odds, as he also has the most points and is out in front right now. The Batmobile is trying to pass him. So far, the Batmobile's passing game has not been the greatest. And he's going to try it once again against this Vendetta, but those wheels could be a problem for him with how big they are. And so far, that is the case. The Batmobile's trying to pass him yet again, fails to do so, and he is blocked. And it looked like the Ford Shelby might have been able to pull off a miracle. But I think the part of the track might have actually stopped him. We'll have to see if it was the cars or the track or some combination of the two. But any chance the Ford Shelby had of moving on might have just been crushed. Here comes the Toyota and the Vendetta, both going airborne. Actually, the Vendetta didn't really go too far into the air. Let's take another look at this. The Vendetta seemed like they finished in first, and then who will be moving on? It is the Vendetta! The Vendetta will be moving on alongside the Batmobile. Very, very valiant effort by the others, but not enough. We now have the day number 4 of the Races and Fun Widowmaker Tournament. This tournament has been absolutely bonkers so far, and I'm sure it'll continue to do so. Here's the first group for today. We have the Lancer Revolution, the 65 Mustang, the Subaru Impreza, and the 69 Chevelle. I am loving the patterns on some of these vehicles right now. I am a sucker for flames, and 2 of these vehicles at least seem to have them, possibly 3. At the beginning of this race, though, it is the Chevelle, I hope I'm saying that right, is out in front. But all 3 racers are directly behind him. In fact, here comes the Mustang, passing him and trying to block him as he spins around to face forward. We have a bit of a traffic jam around that turn, and so far the Mustang takes full advantage of that and goes out in front with a decent gap between him and second place. They go around that turn, here comes the big hump. And they do go airborne for just a split second, but they end up just spinning around, and here comes the Chevelle taking the win at the last moment. That Widowmaker Hill, whatever you want to call it, the game changer, whatever nickname you might give it, that one part of the track can make all the difference in some of these races, and we've certainly seen that happen quite a few times. It definitely shook the Mustang up just enough for the Chevelle to pass them. And if I am pronouncing that wrong, please let me know. And they finished with a 19.96. That's almost in the 20-second mark. That's okay for now, but that could be dangerous later on in this tournament should they progress. The fastest time we had so far currently is held by the Batmobile from the previous video, finishing in the 15-second range, which so far no one else has been able to do, and the Batmobile hasn't even been able to replicate it more than once. And in this second race, the Mustang is now out in front, and there's a lot less of a traffic jam with him and the other three racers, but the other three are relatively close together. The Chevelle is starting to pull away from the other two, but all that could change. The Mustang has a decent-sized lead, so even if he wobbles a little bit, he will have enough time, hopefully, to correct himself. But he did stay on his feet, and he managed to get the win that time. Meanwhile, the Subaru Impreza does finish in second, and the Chevelle gets stuck just short. And we actually have two non-finishers, and one of them is upside down. You're going to see a lot of that if you're just tuning in for the first time in this tournament. We've already had quite a few racers flip over and stay that way. Some of them are able to flip over and then correct themselves, get back on their wheels and keep going. But not everyone is so lucky. You see, sometimes it looks like they'll land on their feet again, but the way they land after they bounce off of the hill is when they start getting loose. So we only had two finishers that time. Now the Mustang has the best advantage because he's finished both times, and no worse than second. The Lancer Revolution ended up on his back the last race. Let's see if he can keep from doing that this time. As we get into the third race and that first turn, the Mustang is once again out in front, and he's trying to pull away, but the Lancer Revolution is not having it. Wait, is it the Revolution or the Evolution? I'll have to double check that later. But for now, the Lancer is actually losing ground on the Mustang, and the Mustang is pulling away. They go around that last turn. They go up the hill. Can they stay on their feet? Yes, they can. And they go down the hill, staying relatively straight and finishing in first yet again. At this point, it is pretty much guaranteed that they will move on, because no one else before this race had any more than 5 points. But it looks like we have another non-finisher. Oh, and it's the Lancer not only ending up upside down again, but off the track. Let's see if this replay will show how that happened. They seem to be doing well. They're in second, at least up until now. But I guess they had more than enough momentum going sideways that they actually went over the side. Or did somebody push them off? We've seen that happen before. In fact, I think it was in the last video. From the looks of the replay, it seems that the Lancer was going off the walls as they started to flip over, and because of that, a lot of that momentum shifted sideways, causing them to go off the track on their own. It's not looking good for the Lancer. In terms of who will move on, the best odds currently reside with the Mustang and the Chevelle. That being said, the Chevelle does have 8, but the Subaru Impreza has 6, so he is right behind him in points. He just needs to catch up to him. So far, it looked like they were unable to do so, but now we have another traffic jam, even going around that turn, and everyone is going much slower than usual. And now it is the Lancer who is out in front. The question is, can they take full advantage of opportunities like this? Let's see if the Lancer can do the same thing. They're currently staying out in front. The others are catching up close. In fact, they're right on top of him, and the Chevelle passes him. The Mustang was unable to do so, but they're in a much better position to move on anyways. And the Impreza, who had an opportunity to take the second position to move on to the finals away, was unsuccessful. As we saw with the Lancer, it is dangerous going over that hill, but it could be even more dangerous if you're colliding with someone else as you do so. An absolutely crazy jump, but thankfully they all still managed to finish. That has been difficult to do even when you don't bump into someone, and the Chevelle is moving on alongside the Mustang. Now in the second group, who will be in the finals? It could be the Ferrari 458, the Cadillac Escalade, the Formulator, and the Split Decision. That's an interesting name. But speaking of which, the Split Decision is currently holding on to a lead as they go around that first turn. The other three are staying relatively close together, but that gap is not that big. I could definitely see someone pulling up behind him out of nowhere. In fact, that looks like it might happen with the Cadillac, who's trying to catch him. Right now, the split decision is out in front. He's trying to block the Cadillac Escalade from passing him. So far, is successful, going side to side at the same time they are. They go over that hill. They both stay on their feet. But the split decision doesn't land straight, goes sideways, and ends up not even finishing. It looked like they might have been able to get a last-moment nudge, but it was not enough. They were in first for most of that race, but as you can see, this one part of the track can change absolutely everything for you. Long story short, you do not want to get too cocky. He started out okay, but then the Cadillac passed him, and then he got spun around even further, causing him to lose so much speed he didn't finish. But the Cadillac did alongside the Formulator. Or is it Formulator or Formulate? I think there might have been a typo in there, but I'm thinking it's Formulator. Even if it's not what it's called, that definitely sounds cooler, at least to me. But here we go into the second race, and now it is the Cadillac who is out in front, with the other three trying to catch up to them. Let's see how they do when they're out in front. Will they be able to withstand the pressure or no? It looks like the Formulator is catching up, bumps into him, tries to pass him, and now we have three people fighting for first place, one right after another, forming a train of sorts as they go around the turn. Here they go up the hill. What changes will this make? The only real change that seems to happen is that the Ferrari flipped upside down and got stuck. But the split decision did manage to push them forward to the point where they could finish, and the split decision rather. Sorry, I'm just so excited. The split decision managed to have enough momentum that they still finished, even if it wasn't last. But any points at all is certainly better than none. Let's see how this will affect the standings. It looks like the Cadillac Escalade has 2 consecutive wins so far. If they can get another one, they will automatically move on. At least to today's finals, not necessarily to the grand finals. They still have another set of races to do if they move on. Will they be able to stay in front after that first turn? Yes, they will. But now the Ferrari and the Formulator are right behind them, and now the split decision, who started off really strong, doesn't seem to be showing up anywhere. Did they get stuck somewhere up the track? We'll have to check them out in a second. But now it is the Ferrari who's out in front. The Cadillac is trying to be the first undefeated racer, and the Ferrari flies off the track. The Ferrari, who had the perfect opportunity to dethrone the Cadillac, was unable to do so as they flew off the track just like the Lancer did. And somehow the split decision is still going. I'm not sure what happened to cause them to be this far behind, but they still managed to finish in third after all that. The Ferrari must have been bouncing off the walls as they went airborne, which is very dangerous, very deadly even, I would say. Let's take a look at that again. They do have the lead, a decent-sized lead, but they just flew clear over the side. And because of that, the Cadillac once again will finish in first, and they will remain undefeated for now. It looked like their hopes of being the first undefeated racer was dashed, but they are holding on to it for now. Talk about a lucky break. 17.75, still not the fastest time, but definitely one of the luckier finishes, to say the least. And the split decision definitely took advantage of that and still managed to finish in third after all that delay. Not sure what caused it, but it definitely helps them. But the Cadillac Escalade is already moving on to the finals. So far, they just need one more race to get a sweep in this group and keep their hope alive of being the first undefeated racer in this tournament. They are starting in the back though. Let's see if that affects anything. They do manage to sneak into third. They're looking for a way to pass the Ferrari. And they managed to do it around that turn. And now they just have split decision in front of them. but the split decision is trying to navigate around them. So far, the Cadillac Escalade is able to pass everybody, and now all four are lined up in a straight line, and now the split decision is taking the lead back. Will the Cadillac be able to catch him again? It doesn't look like he will. The split decision does get the win, and the Cadillac will not be our first undefeated racer in this tournament. In fact, 4 videos in, and we still haven't gotten one. The split decision definitely seems to be a bit of a random racer, to say the least, because sometimes they do well like this, but then other times they somehow fall so far behind that the camera doesn't even see them until the very end. But the Cadillac Escalade and the Formulator will be moving on for the finals, which start now. They will be joining the Chevelle and the Mustang. No one is undefeated. Not one of these racers has the fastest time so far. But again, all you need to do right now is move on in order to keep your hope alive of winning the overall championship. Right now, the 65 Mustang has the lead, and the Cadillac and the Formulator are trying to catch up to them. The Chevelle is trying to do the same, although they're a little bit further behind. But now the Mustang spins around after bouncing off the walls a little bit, and the Cadillac transfers all their momentum to them. And now the Mustang going backwards, but they do have a decent-sized lead. And now the Mustang goes over that hill, does not spin around, they stay straight, even though they're backwards, and gets a relatively clean finish. Formulator in second, Cadillac in third, and the Chevelle in fourth. Let's double check again. Did anybody go airborne on this particular race? The Mustang did just a little bit. Formulator and the Cadillac stayed relatively close to the ground. And the Chevelle, their front end came up a little bit, but they quickly came back down. So now the Mustang and the Formulator. Formulator, I'm not entirely sure. It's kind of flip-flopping back and forth. But I'm sure we'll get a definitive name in later videos if this one moves on. And so far, they're in a better position to do so. Not the greatest, but so far you only need to be in the top 2 in order to move on. So you don't even have to finish in first. Right now, the Mustang is in first, and they do have a lead, but as I say that, the Chevelle is fighting for first place. They currently get it, and they are able to go a little bit faster, widening that gap just a little bit. Now they just got to stay straight and stay on the track, and they do spin around. Will they have enough speed to finish in first? Yes, they will. They finish in first, and the Mustang in second. The Chevelle, who finished in fourth, just changed things up quite a bit. They definitely boosted their odds with that one. And the Cadillac finished in third, and it looks like we have a non-racer back there. We're just waiting for somebody to focus on it. Here we go. And we have another racer who ended up just short of the finish line, upside down. That was a good clean jump. The landing wasn't as smooth, but the air time definitely looked a lot smoother than some of these jumps we've seen before. Just the fact that they stayed on the track itself is quite an improvement for some of the other racers, or at least compared to them. But let's see how that shakes things up in points. Now the Formulator is actually in last with only 3 points, because they didn't even finish at all. That is definitely a hard blow to them. The Chevelle now has 6 points. They're actually close behind the Mustang with that finish. So now the Chevelle is in second of points. And now they seem to have the lead. And they have a decent-sized one at that. For the most part, these races have been relatively close together. Not so this time. The Chevelle is not happy that they finished in last in that first race. And now they're making up for it in spades. They go into the air once again. Clean air time. Not the smoothest of landings, as they did bounce a little bit, but they did stay straight, and they finished in first yet again, and here comes the Mustang in second again. The Formulator did finish in third that time. Definitely better than before, but it looks like it will not be enough, as the Chevelle finished in first again. We only have one more race in this video right now, and it looks like the two most likely to move on are the Ford Mustang and the Chevelle. Let's take a look at this finish yet again. Chevelle way out in front, staying straight almost the entire time. In a race like this with an obstacle like that hill back there, that is not always common. Certainly not as common as people might think. They did finish with a 16.34. That is definitely really good. They may not be the most consistent, but that's definitely one of the faster times we've seen. Again, the fastest time is still currently held by the Batmobile. Here we go, the final race for today. And it looks like the Chevelle is out in front yet again. I'm not sure what caused them to be last in that first race of this group, but they are definitely making up for it. The question is, can they hold on to it? Those two first place finishes almost cemented their spot in the finals, or the grand finals I should say. They go around that turn. Here they go, up against that hill. They go airborne yet again, but this time they do flip over and the Mustang passes them. Will anybody bump the Chevelle forward to help them finish? No, they all go clean past him. I'm not sure if that's going to allow the Chevelle to move on or not. I figured if the Chevelle at least finished at all, that would greatly increase their odds, but they didn't finish. Let's take a look at that airtime again. They did seem relatively set, but it looked like their back wheel actually hit the edge of the ramp going down, causing them to end up on their backs. Meanwhile, these other racers, they saw that, and they managed to pass him. Let's see who's moving on. I believe the Mustang is. I'm not sure if the Chevelle will. It's a shame because it looked like the Chevelle might have been on track for the fastest time we've seen so far. The Chevelle is still moving on alongside the Mustang. And with that, the first half of our roster for this tournament in the Grand Finals is set. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the first half of our Grand Finals roster has been set, and now it is time to fill out the second half. Welcome to day number 5, and here is the first group for today. The Mercedes AMG, the Ferrari Modena, the Aston Martin, and the 05 Viper. Hopefully I pronounced all of those correctly. I feel bad when I mispronounce something because I want to do each racer justice while possible. As we get into this first race though, it is the Viper currently out in front, followed closely by the Ferrari and the Aston Martin, who are actually slowly starting to fall behind. The Viper did go diagonal against the wall, but quickly corrects themselves. They gotta stay straight, otherwise they might lose a lot of speed, or worse, as they approach this last hill. They do go a tad bit airborne, but they stay relatively straight, and then they spin sideways, and they have enough speed to finish in first. The Ferrari finishes in second, the Aston Martin finishes in third, and the Mercedes currently nowhere to be seen, and they now approach, and they are going to finish in fourth. For those of you who are tuning in for the first time, this particular obstacle right here has been a massive game changer so far. Some racers could start out doing relatively well up until this hill, and then everything goes haywire for them. We've seen people spin around, we've seen people flip over, we've even seen some of them fly off the track completely. Long story short, that hill can be very dangerous. And it is likely because of that hill that as of now, we still have not seen an undefeated racer go into the Grand Finals. Usually by now in these tournaments, we have at least 1 or 2, possibly even 3. But as of now, we are halfway through the main part of the tournament before the Grand Finals, and no one has been undefeated. And right now, if anyone's going to break that streak, it's going to be the Viper. So as we get into heat number 2, the Viper, I believe, yes, they are starting way in the back, but look at this, out of nowhere. The Viper and the Ferrari take off like a rocket, leaving the other two in the dust. I am not entirely sure what happened there, but this is going to be good news for them. Right now the Ferrari is trying to do everything they can to stop the Viper from finishing in first again. Because if he doesn't get to be undefeated, he doesn't want anyone else to be. And so far they are staying in first. They approach that hill. They both go airborne. They both spin sideways. And the Viper manages to find a way around the Ferrari and finish in first yet again, despite the Ferrari's best efforts. And there's the Aston Martin finishing in third. The Viper did finish with a slightly faster time, but even then, there are racers who are in the grand finals right now who have finished with even faster times, almost by a full second or two. And just as a reminder, currently the fastest time is held by the Batmobile, who managed to break the 16-second mark and finish with a 15.6692. He appeared in day number 3, and we will be seeing him again in the grand finals. For now, let's take a look at where this last vehicle is. Somehow they're able to get around that last turn. I'm not sure what causes them to slow down so much. It almost looked like they actually got stuck on that last turn. And I'm sure that if it weren't for that dip right at the end of that turn, they would not be able to get over that hill because they almost didn't even there. Look at this, these two were almost synchronized for a little bit, but the Viper managed to control himself just enough to the point where he was able to pass the Ferrari and keep his hope of being the first undefeated racer in this tournament alive. And so far, this last vehicle about to show up, it's not looking good for them, shall we say. But here we go. Right now, the Viper does already have 2 wins. They just need one more to automatically progress. And they are starting behind the Ferrari again, this time in the other lane. And they are pulling ahead of the other 2 again, but this time the gap is much, much smaller. And the Ferrari currently has a bigger lead this time, and any lead you have is definitely advantageous for you. But like we've seen already many, many times, that hill at the very end could switch things up. And look at this, the Viper suddenly pulls away. They go around that last turn. They're trying to stay undefeated. They stay on the hill, and then they fly off the track. And the Ferrari takes advantage of that and finishes in first. Yet another example of the hill taking another victim. It looked like the Viper had it in the bag. But they went from hopefully being undefeated to lying on their backs on the outside of the track. Look at this, the way they went over that hill, they were actually going to the side, and they had enough speed and momentum that they bounced off the railing and just went clean over. This is definitely good for the other racers, but the Viper is still in a good position to move on despite what just happened. Meanwhile, the Aston Martin almost didn't even get over that hill at all. We got the tail end of that. Hopefully, they're not dead or something worse. What could be worse than that, I don't know, but that was horrifying to watch. That being said, the Ferrari does take advantage. The Viper's undefeated streak is cut short already, and that puts him in a much better position to move on alongside the Viper. In fact, I think because of that finish, the Ferrari is actually in the lead in points now by 1 over the Viper. It's looking pretty good for those two. The other two, not so much. And once again, the Viper and the Ferrari are way out in front, but this time they have swapped positions, and now it is the Viper trying to stop the Ferrari from passing him. So far, they're both staying relatively straight, but as I say that, the Ferrari spins around and loses speed as a result. The Viper pulls away, going around that turn, approaching the hill, and they do stay airborne. In fact, that may have been one of the cleanest jumps we've seen so far. They went way into the air, but they didn't bounce all that much, all things considered. You're gonna finish in style, I suppose. And now it is the Aston Martin finishing in 4th, actually. Yet take a look at this jump again. Went clear into the air. Did very little bouncing afterwards. Managed to quickly fix themselves so they stayed on their feet and didn't spin around too much. that is probably one of the better jumps we've seen, even if it's not the absolute smoothest. Because if you can launch yourself pretty far like that, and then quickly get back on your wheels and keep going, you're definitely putting yourself in a much better position. They did almost spin around, but they managed to stop themselves from doing it. The Ferrari wasn't so lucky, but they didn't lose that much speed in the process either. But now all 4 races have been ran, and it is the Viper and the Ferrari moving on. Who will join them in the second group? Let's find out. We have the Low C GT, the Rocket Bikester, the Lancer Evolution, and the Beetle. I'm definitely loving the designs on some of these, even if they're not custom made. Speaking of which, ladies and gentlemen, our next custom mail-in tournament is coming up soon. If you want to participate, go to the Races and Fun Facebook page to learn more. In the first race of this group, the Lancer Evolution is out in front. And so far, no one is that close to them, which normally is a good thing. In fact, it still is. However, that hill can switch things up quite a bit, as we've seen multiple times already. But look at this, the Lancer Evolution actually went sideways for so long that they lost a lot of speed, and now the Beetle is out in front and they take first place. The Lancer still finished in second, which is still good. However, if they can't stay straight, they will be in trouble later. And the Low C gets stuck on the last turn, so we have a non-finisher already. But look at that, they just went so slow around that turn because of the straightaway beforehand. And the Beetle saw an open window and took it, and they actually stayed low to the ground, which is another good strategy. You'll either want to stay low to the ground to keep that speed going, or if you are going to go into the air, launch yourself far, and then don't do much bouncing once you land. But now the Beetle is the one who could be undefeated. If he loses here, then we will go 5 videos without an undefeated racer. Right now the Lancer Evolution is out in front. They did start out in front, so that definitely helps them, but that doesn't always mean they'll stay that way. And now, because of the Low C GT kind of blocking the other two, the Lancer Evolution has a much bigger lead now. In fact, I didn't even see the Low C GT for a second there. The Lancer Evolution is trying to be a little bit more careful this time. So far successful. Bouncing off the walls just slightly, but not too much. They go into the air and then they start spinning sideways, goes backwards. But thankfully they had enough of a lead to the point where they finished in first this time. So the Beetle will not stay undefeated, and we will go 5 straight videos without an undefeated racer. And yep, the Low C GT still doesn't finish, and this time they got stuck much farther up the track. Up until they landed on top of the hill, that Lancer's jump was very nice. In fact, that one was as well, although they did bounce around and spin a little bit after landing. Sometimes the jump isn't all that bad, but how you land can really mess you up as much as the jump itself can possibly do so. These racers are fighting it out, and so far no undefeated racers, but we have 3 of these 4 who are relatively close in points. The Low C GT, with 2 non-finishes already, is already out at this point because they cannot catch up to the Beetle or the Lancer Evolution. At best, they can finish in 3rd. Actually, no, I do take it back, ladies and gentlemen. I did a slight error in my calculation. The Low C GT could still technically move on, but in order for that to happen, they would need to finish in first twice, while the Beetle and the Lancer Evolution do not finish at all. In this particular race, though, the Rocket actually finishes in first. So who's going to finish in second this time is the question. This could make all the difference. Are we going to have anyone else finish? I don't think in the time I've been here we've had any particular race where all 4 racers didn't finish. We usually have at least one. It looks like we did have at least 2 finishers that time. And the low C GT somehow got stuck there, of all places, while the Beetle got stuck where the low C got stuck before. Yeah, that was definitely a nice jump. A little rough on the landing, but the jump itself was beautiful. And that did give him, or rather help him, get the first place finish. And they finished way before anyone else. There's usually not this much of a delay, but look at that. The Lancer, just like one of the racers in the first group, almost got stuck on that turn, but they had just enough momentum going forward to the point where they were at least able to finish at all, which is a much bigger step up than not finishing. Definitely greatly increases their odds to move on, especially with 2 other racers who did not finish. You can see him in the back just coming up now. Makes you wonder what time they would have finished with. So now we are 3 races in. The Rocket and the Lancer are in the best position to move on right now. The Beatles does have 7 points, so he's not too far behind. He could definitely catch up at least to the Rocket Bikester, depending on how they finish. But that'll all depend. Right now the Lancer is out in front, and the Beetle is in second. He definitely needs to step up. He needs to finish really well, while the Rocket does not finish really well. The Lancer currently staying straight, handling those straightaways really well, going around that last turn, going up the hill, slightly airborne, but a very clean landing, and they finish in first, so they will move on. Oh my goodness, I was about to say the Beetle. Are they going to finish in second? No! They don't even finish at all. The Beetle actually gets stuck. We're going to have to see what caused them to end on their back. It's likely this jump here. But the Lancer was very smart in how they landed. They started by clipping the edge of the downward part of that hill, and they landed very smoothly, not much bouncing whatsoever. The Beetle, however, was not so lucky. And this is a shame because it looked like we would have had all 4 racers finish if the Beetle stayed on his feet. But that didn't exactly happen. He ended up on their back going down the hill, and the Rocket managed to take second. The Viper not the Viper, it was the same color, but not quite. The Low C did finish in third, but obviously not enough. The Lancer and the Rocket will be moving on to the finals, and they will be joining the Ferrari and the Viper. You see what I mean? A very similar color. Here we go into the first race of the finals. The Viper and the Ferrari start out in the front row, and so far they're staying relatively neck and neck. As we get around that turn, it is the Viper who takes the lead, and the gap is staying relatively small. But the other racers are trying to catch him. The Viper is pulling away. He is fishtailing a little bit, bouncing off the walls, trying to maintain his speed, which could be good or bad depending on how he approaches this hill. He does land relatively shaky, but he quickly fixes that and stays straight to finish in first. And we have 2 upside-down finishers, ladies and gentlemen. The Viper, and I think that was the Ferrari, finished, but the other 2, they both landed on their backs. Let's take a look at each of these jumps. Here comes the Viper. Goes into the air briefly, and I think they might have clipped the railing just slightly with one of their wheels, but they got back on the track and kept going. That one was relatively clean. They did go diagonal for a little bit, and these 2, almost at the same time, went up the hill, went sideways while airborne, and that caused them to tumble as they approached the finish line, and they got stuck before they could finish. The Rocket and the Lancer both don't finish at all, which is giving the Viper and the Ferrari a much better chance to move on to the grand finals. Here we go into the second race. It is the Lancer and the Ferrari out in front this time. but the Viper is actually pushing the Lancer forward right now. And the Lancer is grateful, takes full advantage, and now they have a decent-sized lead from the other three. But is that gap going to close or widen? So far, they are staying out in front. The other three are staying barely off camera, but here comes the Rocket out of nowhere. Looking to pass, the Lancer almost did, but they couldn't stay straight enough to do it. Now the Lancer goes up the hill, followed closely by the Rocket, who now does take advantage of what happened to the Lancer, who stopped in almost the exact same spot as they did in the first race. And now the Ferrari and the Rocket are the two finishers. And where is the Viper? They somehow ended up going sideways and stopped before they even got to the hill. The Lancer is just not that lucky with this hill. They just end up on their backs. Even if the initial landing looked clean initially. Oh, the Viper actually did get to the hill, but he didn't have enough speed to get up and over because he was going sideways. This is not good for the Viper. He at least did finish in the first race, so that's going to help him, but this certainly will not. We now have two racers tied with 5, one with 6 and the other with 0. Into race number 3. At this point, it's basically anybody's game still, even the Lancer, if he can stay straight and on their wheels. They are in the lead right now, but will they be able to hold on to it? They're trying to get as much of a lead as they can. And one thing they can do, if they're smart about it and careful for sure, is even if they land on their backs, they can try to position themselves in a spot where other racers will push them forward and stopping them in the process. But no, the Lancer Evolution not only was not able to stay on his feet, but he went off the track. And now the Viper crawls to the finish line, barely getting across. And they manage to take first place. And the Rocket pushes the Ferrari ahead of him, so that the Ferrari finishes in second. Every time so far, the Lancer is struggling to get over that hill and stay on the track or on his wheels. The direction he was heading going up that hill caused him to fly clean over. He might have clipped it on his way down. But the fact is, he still didn't finish, making it 3 in a row, and he is out at this point. Because the other 3 racers at least managed to finish. The Viper was going sideways for a little bit, but he straightened himself out just in time to have the speed he needed to finish in first yet again, making up at least a little bit for the non-finish in race number 2. The times aren't that great, but you just need to move on right now. So it's really just a fight for the 2 spots, as it always is. But one racer is basically out at this point, so the other 3 have a bit of breathing room. Right now the Viper has 10 despite not finishing before, so they will have the lead, but the Ferrari is right behind him with 9, and the Rocket has 7. So the Rocket needs to pull something out here. Right now he is in front of the Lancer, so he might finish in second if things stay the way they are. The Viper currently has the lead going into that last turn, and they go up the hill, and they land on their nose for a second, but they get back into a better position, and they finish in first, so it is the Viper moving on. And I didn't quite say, I think the Ferrari finishing in last, I don't think they'll move on as a result. The Rocket, I believe, managed to finish in second that time. At least our friend who's been not finishing at all, he's able to at least do so this time around. So they can say they at least finished once. But the Viper will be moving on. It's just a matter of who is going to join him. I believe it will be the Rocket, but we'll see for sure in just a moment. Oh no, I stand corrected. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a tiebreaker. The 2 red vehicles, the Rocket and the Ferrari, will have a face-off now, and I believe it'll be who has the fastest time after 2 races. So if your faster time in the first race is faster than the other racer, if they finish in first in the second race, you will still move on because you have the overall fastest time in the tiebreaker. Right now, the Ferrari is in front, but the Rocket is fighting with him around that turn. And now the Rocket is out in front, but he spins sideways as he goes up the hill. But because the Ferrari did the same thing afterwards, the Rocket managed to stay in first and now has the upper hand, finishing with a 17.73. If the times get really close, we will go into further decimals. But right now, the important thing is the Rocket has the first place right now, finishing with a 17.73. So now, not only does the Ferrari have to finish in front of him in this race, they will have to finish faster than the 17.73. Otherwise, they will still not move on. The Ferrari is out in front for the moment. In fact, they are pulling away as much as they can right now. They are determined to stay in this tournament. They are bouncing off the walls just slightly. Any friction with the walls can slow you down significantly, and other racers can take full advantage of that. They go around the turn, and here comes the Rocket, trying to catch him. Will he be able to do it? No, instead he flips upside down, and the Ferrari will finish in first, but he finishes with a slower time. Which ultimately means, despite not finishing in this race, the Rocket is the one moving on. An absolute nail-biter. They do both go slightly airborne, but because the Ferrari... Actually, no, because the Rocket was going slightly sideways, he did flip over. But the Rocket is still moving on alongside the Viper, and now we just have 6 spots. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to day number 6 of the Races and Fun Widowmaker Tournament. Here's the first group for day number 6, which has the Chrysler 300C, the Cadillac CN, the Cadillac V16, and the Off-Track. Again, hopefully I'm pronouncing all those names correctly. I want to do each racer justice as best I can. In the first race, the Off-Track currently has the lead, and they go around that turn, and the other 3 slow down a little bit, but the Cadillac CN and the Chrysler end up passing the Off-Track. And now the 2 of them are fighting for first place as they go down that straightaway. The Chrysler is trying to find an opening, so far being blocked by the Cadillac, who uses a little bit of a momentum shift to go a little bit faster and gain that speed needed to hopefully stay in first. And they don't, actually. After going over that hill, the Cadillac loses enough speed to the point where it looks like they won't even finish. But they do get nudged forward, allowing them to still finish in second despite all that. The Chrysler found the opening they needed after that jump, and they finished in first. So they will be the racer here to try and stay undefeated. And as a reminder, ladies and gentlemen, we have now gone 5 whole videos without an undefeated racer going into the grand finals. Usually by now we have at least 3 or 4, but as of right now we still have 0. But after that first finish, the Chrysler 300C has the first win. So they will now be fighting to stay undefeated and hopefully be the first racer to do so in this tournament. They are starting in the back row, but sometimes, just because you start in the back doesn't mean you'll stay there. The Cadillac CN and the Off-Track are the 2 that start out in front after that first turn. The Cadillac is trying to hold on to the lead this time, and the Off-Track is staying right close to them. In fact, the Off-Track gained a burst of speed, bumping right into the back of the Cadillac, who then used that moment to go even faster like they did before. They go around that last turn, up the hill, and they end up going sideways vertically, ending up on their backs, and the Off-Track went clean past them, allowing them to finish in first. So this group will not provide any undefeated racers. In fact, I think the Off-Track might be the only finisher. Yet the other Cadillac and the Chrysler ended up causing a traffic jam further up the track, and then the Cadillac CN didn't finish at all. Well, they almost did, but because of that jump up there and the way they landed, they stopped right there. The off-track almost pushed them forward, but they managed to find just enough of a gap to navigate around them, which is very helpful for them because now they are in the lead of points with 6. Into race number 3, the Cadillac Sienna is currently in first, and the off-track is right next to the Chrysler. As they go around that turn, the Chrysler just edges out the off-track, but the off-track might be able to find another opening still. And they almost do that, but around that turn, he lost so much momentum colliding into the Chrysler, and the Chrysler is now the one going up against the Cadillac Sienna, who used a similar technique to get a bigger lead in first. And ladies and gentlemen, that might have been the best jump I've seen in this tournament so far. Clear into the air, very smooth landing, no bouncing whatsoever as far as I could tell. Meanwhile, among these racers, the Cadillac V16 did finish in second. I believe they're going to give that to off-track, even though he's not all the way over the finish line. I believe as long as the majority of your vehicle finishes, it still counts. But look at this jump. That was very smooth. I love that jump. That's probably my favorite one in this tournament as of now. There was very little spinning, if any at all. They landed on the ground without bouncing, and they just kept going like nothing happened. At least up until they got to that wall where they spun out. But hey, the jump itself, very clean. But the Chrysler actually got stuck there. And despite being nudged by the other two, they still will not finish, and they do give it to the off-track, finishing in third. So now we have one more heat. Who has the most points? It is currently... Actually, 2 racers are tied for the lead in points, that being the Cadillac Sienna and the off-track. While the other 2 only have 5. It's still technically anyone's game. It all depends on how you finish in this race. And right now, the off-track is in the lead. And his current point rival, the Cadillac Sienna, is back in third currently. The off-track just needs to stay straight, which they are struggling to do going around that turn. They picked themselves back up a little bit, but they almost actually flipped over the Cadillac Sienna as they bounced into the back of them. And the Cadillac Sienna, I think, finished in second. It was relatively close between him and the Chrysler, but I think they're probably going to get that to the Cadillac. Yeah, look at that. It looked like the Cadillac Sienna might have actually had a decent landing, but because he collided with the off-track on the way down, that might have been what caused him to flip over. He did get nudged forward, so he still finishes in second, I think. I think they're going to give it to him. Yes, they will, and as a result, the off-track and the Cadillac Sienna will be moving on. Who will join him in the second group? Let's find out. The 71 Plymouth, the 10 Shelby, the Bugatti Veyron, and the Paradox. I try to look up the names of these vehicles now ahead of time so I know how to properly pronounce them. And if I'm still getting them wrong, I apologize. But now we get into this first race with this group, and right now the Paradox is out in front. Meanwhile, the Plymouth and the Veyron are fighting for second place. Not sure where the Shelby is currently, but I'm sure we'll find out, even if they don't finish by the end of the race. Right now, the Paradox actually has a really big lead, and they take advantage of that, take their time going over that hill, and they finish in first. So now they will be the one in contention for being undefeated. Meanwhile, the Bugatti finishes in second. Will we have anyone else? It's hard to say right now. I personally do not see anybody. Oh wait, there's the Shelby. They finish in third, which makes you wonder what happened to the Plymouth. They did end up on their back, but not where most of the racers usually do so. Usually, if anyone winds up on their back, it's after they go through this jump here. But somehow they wound up on their backs way up there. So they are not in a good spot if that's what's going to happen to them that far up the track. And the Shelby took clear advantage of that, and despite only finishing in third, it's definitely a good place to start, at least by comparison. The Paradox finished with an 18.15. I don't think anybody has beaten the Batmobile's fastest time so far from day 3, which actually broke the 16-second mark with about a 15.6692. Some racers have gotten relatively close, or at least finished within a 16-point something, but I think the Batmobile is the only one to finish under 16 seconds so far. Into heat number 2. Now it's the Paradox trying to stay undefeated. They are starting in the back, but they're pushing the Shelby forward, trying to gain any sort of momentum they can get right from the start. But right now they are actually in 4th, as the Bugatti is now the one in the lead, followed closely by the other 3. They're actually forming a bit of a train, using a bit of drafting as they get closer and closer. And now here comes the Plymouth, trying to pass the Bugatti, but ends up passing his momentum to him. And they go around the turn, the Bugatti goes up the hill and flies off the track. It looked pretty smooth from my angle, but I guess he was going to the side just enough to the point where he flies clean off. A very harsh accident going over the side of that hill. He at least ended up back on his feet by the time it was all said and done. But a non-finish is definitely really painful, especially in a tournament like this. They did kind of grind over the rail a little bit, but they did not finish. And now, the Shelby finished in 3rd yet again, and the Paradox, because of the Bugatti flying over the side, was able to finish in 1st yet again. Just 2 more races, I was about to say racers, but races, going into the finals, and 1 more win in order to automatically go to the finals. Once again, starting out in the back row, but they have the tighter turn here, and they start off in 3rd as a result, but they do spin around relatively quickly, slowing down significantly. So now it's between the Plymouth and the Shelby, but the Plymouth bouncing off the walls a little bit, but they are gaining a decent-sized lead over this. But here comes the Paradox. He's suddenly picking up speed. He might have passed the Shelby, might not have. It was hard to tell. No, they didn't. The Shelby is still in front of them, and the Plymouth stops the Paradox's undefeated streak after just the 3rd race. Speaking of 3rd, that's where the Paradox finished, and the Shelby actually finished in 2nd that time. Meanwhile, the Bugatti got stuck way up there. At least they weren't on their backs like the Plymouth was earlier. But not finishing regardless of how is a massive blow to your chances to move on. And because the Shelby has been relatively consistent, they might still have a shot. Sometimes even if you don't finish the best, if you finish the most consistent, that still can really help you. And right now, after that 2nd place finish, the Shelby has 7 points. And in comparison to the other racers, the Plymouth has 8, and the Paradox has 12. So it's more than likely that the Paradox will be moving on at this point. The Shelby could still take the 2nd place spot from the Plymouth. And this is actually a possibility, but right now it is a little hard to do, because it is the Paradox out in front who can get the most points from finishing in 1st, obviously. So it's all just dependent on who finishes where. Because the Paradox could have gone off the track after that jump, but he did not, and he finished in 1st. 3 out of 4 races finishing in 1st, but because of that 1 3rd place finish, he will not be undefeated. The Plymouth finished in 2nd, the Bugatti in 3rd, and the Shelby, will they finish at all? They will! But I don't think it's going to be enough. It was really close. They were really consistent up until that last race. If they could have stayed as consistent as they were, they might have had a slim chance to move on. But I think that chance has been dashed. I believe it'll be the Paradox and the Plymouth moving on. We'll have to take a look again in just a second. Yeah, these have been some of the cleaner finishes so far, even if not the fastest, because usually we have at least one racer who somehow ends up on their back, either it be because of the ramp or something else. But all 4 racers did finish. And it is the Paradox and the Plymouth moving on. Wonderful efforts, by the other racers. But now we have our finals for today. The Paradox, the Off-Track, the Plymouth, and the Sienne. The Sienne and the Plymouth start out in the front row, but the Sienne and the Off-Track are trying to pull away. In fact, the Off-Track has the inside lane, trying to spin out the Plymouth, so far unable to do so. And now the Cadillac is trying to pull away while the other 3 are fighting for second place. In fact, I think the Plymouth was slowing the other 2 behind him down. So the Cadillac is taking full advantage of that, trying to gain as much of a lead as they can, and now they approach that hill, and almost a relatively clean jump, but they did bounce a little bit after landing. They did finish in first though, and that, between the Paradox and the Plymouth, that was a close one. They were coming in hot, fighting for that second place position, but I think the Paradox had his nose or his back end out in front of the Plymouth, allowing him to finish in second. In previous tournaments, the nose block right before the finish has been one of the most popular moves we've seen racers do. And it was his back end after bouncing off the wall. He saw the Plymouth coming, and he took the shape of his vehicle to his advantage and stopped the Plymouth from passing him at the last moment. So now it is the Paradox who has the better odds of moving on compared to the Plymouth. But right now the Plymouth is in the front row with the insider lane, and they take advantage of it and start out in first as they go down the rest of the track, while the other 3 are fighting in a little bit of a traffic jam going around that turn, which is very dangerous because they could lose a lot of speed as a result. But now here they're all coming into the traffic jam now, and now it is the Off-Track out in first. It's almost like he's taunting the Plymouth as he goes backwards down the track, up the hill, and he stays backwards going across the finish line. That may be one of the sickest taunts I've seen in a long time. And despite all that speed, somehow the Cadillac Sienne actually stopped before they crossed. Look at this, they're just staring down the Plymouth while they go up that hill, not even looking where they're going. One of the most dangerous stunts in this tournament. We're going to have to see what caused that Cadillac to slow down to a stop. It looks like after they landed, they went sideways, and that brush up against the wall stopped them completely. That first place finish definitely helps them and keeps them from getting out of this tournament altogether so far. But they will have to pick the pace back up, because right now 3 racers are tied with 5, while the Off-Track has 6. And the Off-Track, speaking of which, does have a decent-sized lead right now. Somehow, it seems like one racer will take the lead and the other 3 will fight for second place in this tournament, particularly in this group. But now the Cadillac is coming out of nowhere. He's trying to pass the Off-Track, trying to get inside, so far unable to do so. And now, I think the Cadillac went over the side, and the Off-Track, no, the Cadillac somehow stayed on the track. It looked like he went clean over the side, and the Off-Track landed on their side. And the Plymouth is the one who doesn't finish this time around. This is definitely a replay I will have to look at closely. That is one of the craziest saves ever. The Cadillac was going to go over the side, but a lucky bounce kept him on the track. And I think he finished in first despite that jump. That is insane. I thought he was going over the track, but I guess he bounced off one of the posts holding the track up, and he got himself back in. 2 things I hadn't seen in this tournament before up until now. Going off the track, but somehow finding your way back on, and the Off-Track didn't land on his wheels, and didn't land on his back, but somehow wound up on their side. They did finish upside down, but they were sliding sideways. And now with 1 race to go, it is now the other way around with 3 racers out in front and 1 racer farther behind. Right now, in order, it is the Cadillac, the Paradox, and the off-track. But now it is between the Cadillac and the Paradox. As they go around that last turn, the off-track is trying to catch back up to them. The Paradox and the Cadillac go over that hill. Not much passing going on, but once again, the Paradox uses the shape and size of his car to his advantage and blocks anyone from passing him. With a finish like that, I believe it'll be the Paradox and the Cadillac moving on. Yeah, everyone stayed relatively close to the ground this time around. And the Plymouth was much further behind there. But ladies and gentlemen, we have seen some of the craziest things in this tournament to date. One of the smoothest jumps. One of the greatest saves in the tournament that I've ever seen. And landing in ways no one would expect. This is definitely one of my favorite races in this tournament so far. Let me know which one is your favorite in the comments below. The Cadillac and the Paradox will be the ones moving on. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have 2 days left before the grand finals, and this is one of them. Welcome to day number 7. Here's the first group for today's races. We have the Corvette, the Way Too Fast, the Mercedes-AMG, and the Paradigm Shift. Here we go. Right out the gate, the Paradigm Shift and Way Too Fast, despite being in the same lane, are the two taking off in front of the others. And now the Paradigm Shift has a decent-sized lead that seems to get bigger, but Way Too Fast is trying to keep that gap from getting any wider. So far successful, and the Paradigm Shift is trying to hold on to that lead, trying to find any way to stay in front. But they spin sideways, and Way Too Fast cleanly navigates around him and takes the lead. And now they're the ones in first as they get into the turn before the big hump. And here they go up, and they stay relatively on their wheels for the most part, and they manage to take the win. And the Paradigm Shift will finish in second. There goes the Mercedes, and then the Corvette. The Way Too Fast finished with about a 19.5. That is not quite close at all to our fastest time so far, which is still being held by the Batmobile from day 3. So the Batmobile has been keeping a good streak going as to how long they've been holding on to that fastest time. Maybe I'll jinx it right now and somebody will break it today, but we will see. For now, though, it is Way Too Fast who is finished in first, and they will be the one out of this group to have a chance at staying undefeated, but they will need to finish in first 7 more times in this video for that to happen. So far in this entire tournament, no one has been able to pull that off, and that could very well be partly, at least, due to the big jump at the end, which has been a massive game changer for many racers. For now, Way Too Fast is still out in front. In fact, they have a decent-sized lead compared to the other racers right now. We go around the turn. Let's see how far back Paradigm Shift is. He does have quite a ways to go to catch up to Way Too Fast, who's now going into the last turn, heading into the jump, and that may be one of the cleaner landings we've seen in this tournament so far. Not much of a bounce at all, stayed on his feet, and he kept relatively straight. Finished about 2.5 seconds faster that time. Meanwhile, the Paradigm Shift, looking like he was going to finish in second again, ended up getting stuck in last. Let's see if we can see what happened. It looks like Paradigm Shift was going around that last turn completely sideways, allowing the other 2 racers to catch up, and from that point, they just kept falling further and further behind until they finished in last. You can see them all bunching up back there in the background. And as we get down this hill, it looked like Paradigm Shift might have been able to at least finish in third, but then he spun around and lost enough speed to the point where he finished in last. Meanwhile, Way Too Fast has 2 consecutive wins already. 1 more and they will automatically move on to the finals. And they are starting out in the front this time. And that may actually be helping them significantly right now, my apologies, as they once again take the lead. Right now, the Paradigm Shift is actually staying close behind this time around. And going around the turn, it's Way Too Fast who goes sideways, and then the Paradigm Shift does the same thing, and any chance he had of catching up pretty much got dashed, and he blocked the Corvette, causing him to lose speed. And now Way Too Fast has a much bigger lead than he started out with. And he goes into that jump almost tipping over a little bit, but he spins around, does a 360, loses a lot of speed. Here come the other racers, but it wasn't enough. And once again, the paradigm shift, looking like he was going to finish in second, lost so much speed that not only did he finish up in last, but he didn't even finish, period. So now he'll get 0 points for that race. It looked like Way Too Fast started to tip sideways a little bit as he was going over that hill, but he managed to fix it, even if he did end up spinning around a little bit. But he does have 3 consecutive wins, meaning he will automatically move on to the finals and living up to their name of Way Too Fast. Time-wise, they do still have some work to do, but the fact that they're already in the finals, they can relax a little bit and maybe focus on speed more. Focusing on their techniques, honing them a little bit, if you will. And now into this last race of this group. Once again, the Paradigm Shift and Way Too Fast are out in front, but this time it is Paradigm Shift who starts in front of Way Too Fast, and let's see if they can take advantage of it. They go around that turn, and so far that gap is getting smaller, but they're using the nose block to keep Way Too Fast from passing them. But now he keeps spinning around, and Way Too Fast is trying to find an opening. But these two and their scuffle is causing the others to catch up a little bit. And once again, Paradigm Shift goes into that turn sideways, still holds on to the lead. Can he keep it? He's trying to block both racers this time, and he managed to pull it off. That wasn't just a race, it was a battle. Almost for at least half of that race, the Paradigm Shift had to block not 1, but 2 racers from passing him, and somehow he managed to succeed. Not only was that a nose block, that was a tail block, a body block, if you will. So he stopped Way Too Fast from staying undefeated, and because of that finish, he barely managed to sneak in with Way Too Fast to move on to the finals. And now in the second group, we have the Lotus Esprit, a horseplay, slider, and a speed bump. And right out the gate, it looks like the slider, and I think that's the speed bump out in front. And around that first turn, they do have a little bit of a scuffle. And now a bit of a traffic jam, but right now it looks like the speed bump has the lead, followed closely by horseplay. And these 4 are staying relatively close together, but around that turn, the speed bump and the horseplay take off from the other 2. Yeah, Way Too Fast and speed bump. It looks like the ones that have to do with speed in their name are the ones that are doing really well right now. And the speed bump actually did relatively well on that jump, but he did bounce a little bit after landing. But he had so much of a lead that it didn't even matter, and they win in first place. And horseplay barely manages to finish in second. The Lotus Esprit almost caught up to him at the end, but the gap was just too big for him to catch up. And here come the racers again. Let's see how their jumps were. That one didn't jump much at all. And these two, it looks like most of them were able to actually stay on the track going over that hill, which is usually the safer option, but maybe not always the faster one. If you think you can do a big jump and stay on your feet afterwards, that may be the best way to go. But for now, it is the speed bump out in front. And if he does not finish in first at some point in this video, we will go 7 consecutive videos without an undefeated racer. But now it is the horseplay who's currently out in front, and the speed bump is pushing him along. And around that first turn, that's exactly what happens, and the horseplay got a momentum shift, allowing him to take off from the other 3. He did wiggle a little bit going around that turn, which caused him to slow down a little bit. But he is trying to stay perfectly straight, which is difficult to do sometimes, as you've seen many times in this tournament. Anytime he starts a slide, he hits the wall, straightening himself out. But he flips over, going over that hill, and horseplay comes to a stop. And the speed bump glides right past him, allowing him to stay undefeated. It looked like horseplay was going to take that from him, but it didn't end up happening, and horseplay actually blocked Slider from finishing as well. Slider was able to stay on their feet, but because of horseplay being in his way, he wasn't able to finish. It looked like horseplay was doing relatively well until he came down for the landing, and he flipped over onto his back, a common thing with that obstacle. The Lotus almost actually didn't get over that hill at all. He almost stopped at the peak of it. But because of that little incident, the speed bump still remains undefeated after 2 races. And one more will automatically stamp their spot in today's finals. Meanwhile, the slider and the horseplay have a little bit of work to do. Any non-finish is a massive blow to your points, along with your chances to move on. And right now, the speed bump is once again pushing horseplay forward, and they will take the front 2 spots going into that first turn. The Lotus and the slider will have to find some way to catch up. The Lotus is a little bit closer, but that could change. And the speed bump saw horseplay trying to mess with him, and he managed to slow him down going around that turn. And they do spin around, but they keep straight. So whether you're going forwards or backwards, if you're staying straight, you should still be okay. Going up into that jump, they bounce a couple times and spin back around facing forward, but they do lose a lot of speed. Thankfully for them, no one was able to catch up in that time. So they are finishing 3 times in a row in first, so they'll automatically move on. Meanwhile, the Lotus actually did get stuck on the hill this time, and it looks like we'll have 2 non-finishers, as the slider actually got stuck early on in the race. Let's take a look at these jumps again. Yeah, he did bounce a couple times, catching the lip on the way down, but he did stay straight and he finished first for the 3rd time. There wasn't much of a jump by horseplay, and the Lotus actually got stuck up there. I figured it could happen, and that's exactly what happened. The speed bump is sitting pretty at this point. And the horseplay, because he finished, that definitely helps them. And they do take 2nd place from the Lotus Esprit. 1 heat left. The horseplay needs to finish in front of the Lotus in order to keep their hopes alive of moving on alongside Speed Bump. And the Speed Bump, speaking of which, is once again out in front, but the horseplay is trying to close that gap going around that turn. And so far, it's staying relatively the same, but the horseplay starts bouncing off the walls and Speed Bump takes off. Now he's got a much bigger lead and he hopes to maintain it. Got a decent amount of speed going over that hill, a decent jump, and he actually flips forward onto his back, and he comes to a stop. Will someone nudge him forward? No, the horseplay navigates around him and takes 1st place. The Speed Bump, while still moving on, will not be undefeated, and we will go 7 videos without an undefeated racer. This could be one of the first tournaments I've personally seen where no one goes into the grand finals undefeated. But the Speed Bump will be moving on, and I think because he finished in 2nd, the horseplay will be joining him. And the Lotus actually almost got stuck up there again. If he wasn't pushed by the slider, he may have had just enough momentum to pass through, but it's hard to tell now. Great navigation by horseplay. He's coming so close to staying undefeated with a sweep in the 1st group before the finals, but they just could not pull it off. But now here we go into the finals, where we have the Speed Bump, the Way Too Fast, the horseplay, and the Paradigm Shift. So far, Way Too Fast and Speed Bump were the 2 that performed better than the others, as they had the most wins and locked in their spot in the finals after only 3 races. Meanwhile, we have a traffic jam, and the Paradigm Shift is trying to take full advantage of it and gain as much of a lead as they can, so that even if they do slip up a little bit, the other 3 would have to work really hard to catch up to them. It looks like the horseplay might have broken away from that traffic jam. Let's see if they can catch up to Paradigm Shift, who's approaching the hill now, and almost flips over, but manages to save it, spins around, and glides slowly across the finish line. The horseplay, if given just a couple more seconds, might have been able to pull something off. And the Speed Bump, surprisingly, is the one who finishes in 4th. And that wasn't the smoothest jump or the smoothest landing, but the fact that they got back on their wheels and finished in 1st still means something. He had some non-jumps and some rocky jumps in there. But the paradigm shift, look how slowly they were moving. The horseplay was creeping up on him. And again, given a couple more seconds, he might have been able to pass Paradigm. So the paradigm shift is in the best position right now. Let's see if they can keep that, because they have struggled a little bit in these races so far. But they managed to move on by the skin of their teeth. And right now they are actually starting in the back with the way this is set up. And Way Too Fast currently has the lead, followed closely by Horseplay and Speed Bump. And Horseplay actually manages to surpass Way Too Fast before going into the next turn. And Way Too Fast manages to block Speed Bump at least. And now he's trying to knock Horseplay out of the way. But now that allowed Speed Bump to catch up, and now we have a three-way race. Horseplay trying to hold on to that lead. He goes around the last turn while the other two are fighting with each other. He goes up the hill and back down, spins around a little bit, straightens out and takes the win. And Speed Bump manages to finish in second that time. That must have been absolutely chaotic with those other three, because it seemed like they were shifting around a lot near the end. It looked like Way Too Fast was trying to block him. Let's see if we can see what happened from this angle. Yeah, Way Too Fast almost was able to nose block him, but he didn't leave enough room to correct himself, and Speed Bump passed him. And Way Too Fast ended up finishing in fourth. Remember, the top two will move on here, so even if you don't finish in first, you still at least have a shot to move on. Right now, Way Too Fast has a slight lead, but the Speed Bump is trying to pass him. Will he be able to do it? Way Too Fast is being nudged by Horseplay. He's trying to pass him now, but Way Too Fast manages to maintain the lead for now. And now it is Speed Bump and Horseplay going up against each other. And Way Too Fast, seeing an opportunity, tries to gain a little bit more of a lead, going into last turn, going up the hill. And again, not the smoothest jump, but he managed to stay straight the entire time and finish in first, something he absolutely needed after this point. And it looks like we may have a non-finisher this time around. And it looks like Speed Bump eventually came off the track, likely going over that bump in the process. And the paradigm shift didn't even get up the hill. Or maybe they did, but they didn't have enough speed to complete it and went backwards. Let's take another look. Yep, Speed Bump went over the side as they went across the peak of that hill. Meanwhile, the paradigm shift did not have the speed needed to even go up to the top. Now you can kind of see Speed Bump falling off back there. And as a result, we only have two finishers this time, which really helps Way Too Fast. And Horseplay, both of them are now in a much better position, particularly Horseplay. And Way Too Fast finishing in first was helpful enough, but the fact that the other two didn't finish at all is a major boost in their chances. In this last heat, it is the Speed Bump who's out in front, and Way Too Fast is trying to catch up now. He did manage to pass Paradigm Shift, but he has a lot of ground to cover if he wants to catch back up to Horseplay and Speed Bump. Speed Bump has a much bigger lead right now, which is something they really need. They go into the last turn. Can they stay on their feet this time? No, they flip over and get on their backs and they come to a stop. A common event in these races, Horseplay skids past him perfectly, and Way Too Fast might have just gotten the break they needed, finishing in second place. Meanwhile, Paradigm Shift is nowhere to be seen. But here they come. Can they pass Speed Bump? They do. They did a very similar maneuver to Horseplay, spinning around as they passed Speed Bump. And Speed Bump was the only one who didn't end up finishing. The motto of this bump right here, just because you're in first for most of the race doesn't mean you'll stay that way by the end. It really keeps things interesting, because you never know what's going to happen, even up until the last second. And it looked like Paradigm Shift barely had enough speed to go around that last turn, and because of going down that hill beforehand, they did manage to get over the hill that time. But I believe it'll be Horseplay and Way Too Fast moving on to the grand finals. And oh wait, we still have to wait for Paradigm Shift to finish. Yep, here they come. They did something very similar to Horseplay here. Look at that. going completely sideways as they went past speed bump, but they managed to hit him. Not hit him, actually. And it is horseplay and way too fast moving on. And now we only have 2 spots to fill for the Grand Finals roster. Thank you all so much for watching. We'll see you for day 1. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we only have 2 spots left to fill for the Grand Final roster, and they will be filled today. Let's see if anyone in the first group can get those spots, which has the hot tub, the Honda Civic, the Shelby GT, and the Tacoma. The Tacoma seems to be a bit longer of a vehicle. We'll see if that comes into play or not. Meanwhile, the hot tub actually has what looks to be an actual hot tub on the surface of the vehicle. Not sure if that's going to help or hinder them or what, but we will see. Right now they are in second, battling for the first place spot with, I believe, that to be the Shelby GT. They are going back and forth. The Shelby spins around and the hot tub passes right by them. And now they have a decent sized lead going into that last turn before the jump. The infamous jump for sure. They go up slightly, but they manage to stay on their feet for the most part, and they finish in first. Meanwhile, who will take second place? It's going to take a while for someone to get there. It looks like it might be the Tacoma, and it is. Meanwhile, the Shelby finishes in third, and the Honda Civic is way back here somewhere. They actually stopped on the peak of that jump. I guess they must have had just enough speed to get up there, but not enough to get the rest of the way. There go the Tacoma and the Shelby. Let's see what happened with the Civic. It looks like they were spinning as they went up the hill, causing them to lose all of their speed in a very short amount of time. Tub finishes. The fastest time is still being held by the Batmobile, who appeared in day 3. But so far, no one is undefeated in this entire tournament. And this is the last day for someone to possibly go into the Grand Finals with that goal in mind. And right now, if anyone's going to do that in this group, it would be the hot tub. But right now, the Shelby is trying to keep the Honda Civic from passing him, but he almost forgot about the hot tub, who caught up at the same time. And now the Shelby is trying to keep the hot tub from passing him, and each turn, it looks like the hot tub is getting slightly closer, and now that gap is closed. But now the hot tub is trying to find a way around him, so far unable to do it. But after that jump, it's the Shelby GT that ends up on their back after spinning, and the hot tub finishes in first yet again. Meanwhile, the Honda Civic gets a much-needed second-place finish. Not as good as first place, obviously, but it's certainly better than not finishing at all like they did the first time. Yeah, the hot tub almost had their streak ended early, but the Shelby GT could not stay on their feet. Meanwhile, the Honda Civic did a little bit of a grind right before the finish line. And now the hot tub just needs one more win to automatically move on to today's finals. Let's see if they can get it. They are starting in the front half of this group on this particular heat. And it looks like the Shelby GT is pushing them forward just a little bit, which the hot tub takes full advantage of and now has the lead. And now that gap is getting bigger and bigger, and they go around that turn with no one anywhere near them. And the other 3 are trying to fight for second place at this point. But the hot tub needs to stay on their feet, because that jump is going to make it difficult. Just because you are in first for most of the race doesn't mean you'll stay that way. And just like that, the hot tub not only rolls over, but goes over the side of the track. It looked like they might have been able to save it, but just could not do it. And the Tacoma will finish in first that time. The poor hot tub streak is already over. But their 2 first place finishes definitely helps them keep their chances alive of moving on. That was rough. It looked like they were tumbling on the edge of the wall for a little bit before going over, which must have been even more painful than just flat out flying over the edge. And because he didn't finish, and because the Tacoma finished in first that time, I believe they are now tied at 10 points apiece. Meanwhile, the other 2 are tied at just 5. Meaning basically Honda Civic and Shelby GT are out at this point unless they can get some miracle where the hot tub and the Tacoma don't finish at all, but the Honda Civic and Shelby GT would both need to finish in first simultaneously. But for now, the hot tub is way out in front. Can they stay on their feet this time going around that jump? No, they fly off the track yet again! And the Tacoma will take the win this time. But because the Shelby GT and the Honda Civic, neither one of them finishing in first, I believe the hot tub will still move on alongside the Tacoma. Let's see what happened here. They didn't do much spinning. In fact, they almost clean went over the edge that time, but they caught the lip on the way down, causing them to also flip over as they were landing. 2 first place finishes and then 2 instances of flying clear off the track. But I believe the hot tub will still move on. Let's see. Yes, they will. They will move on alongside the Tacoma. Let's see who will join them from the second group. We have the Ferrari 458, the 65 Mustang, the Corvette, and the Dodge. These are the last entries in the regular season before the grand finals begins. And 2 of them will join in on the finals alongside the Tacoma and the hot tub. So far, it's looking pretty good for the Corvette as they are pulling away from the other 3 who are staying relatively close together. And it looks like they're doing really well so far, aside from that little instance of staying relatively straight. And now let's see if they can do that going into this turn, leading into the jump. The turn looks good. They almost grind the edge a little bit, but they go completely sideways and they go to a stop. And it is the Ferrari who finishes in first. And the Mustang right behind him, and the Dodge gets stuck behind the Corvette while on their back. Let's see what happened with the Dodge. How did they get on their back? Obviously, it's the jump. They actually looked like they had a really decent landing, but something caused them to flip over just as they finished their landing. But the other 2 managed to get around them somehow. So the Ferrari is now in the best position to move on alongside the Mustang. But anything can happen in these next 3 races. Here we go. So right now it is the Mustang and the Corvette starting in the front 2 spots. But the Corvette is pulling away once more. And the Mustang actually tried to fight to hold on to second place, but the Ferrari kept bumping into him going around that turn, and now he is in second. Meanwhile, the Corvette is trying to maintain a lead again, but so far, the others are trying to catch up. They're a little bit closer this time, though still relatively further away. The Corvette goes around the turn, they go up the hill, and they didn't have enough speed to really go airborne, but that may be for the best right now, as they now finish in first, and I think the Ferrari managed to finish in second, just ahead of the Mustang. We'll take a look at the replay yet again just to be sure, but it's pretty clear that the Dodge finished in 4th. Yep, it is the Ferrari who finished in second that time, and because of that first place finish, the Corvette is now able to breathe a little bit, knowing that they've caught up to at least second place, keeping their hopes alive to move on. The Dodge has a lot of work to do. In heat number 3, going around that turn, it is the Ferrari who starts out in the lead, and the Corvette tried to pass him, but he nudged the Ferrari in the process, causing him to go sliding sideways. I tried to say both words simultaneously. And now we have a 3-way race near the front, and the Dodge is trying to get past the Corvette and the Ferrari. So far, he loses on that speed a little bit, and the 2 leaders go into that jump, and somehow the Ferrari, despite being on his back, was able to get pushed far enough to still finish in first, and the Corvette finished in second. Meanwhile, the Dodge finished in 3rd that time, and the Mustang in 4th. That was a wacky turn of events. Usually when someone lands on their back, they come to a stop. But somehow the Ferrari managed to have so much momentum going forward, which may have been helped by a push from the Corvette, that they finished in first despite that. And now looking at the scores, the Ferrari has 11, the Mustang has 6, and let's see what the other two had. The Corvette actually has 8. So despite not finishing in that first race, they are in second place for points. If they can maintain that, then they will move on alongside what will likely be the Ferrari going into the finals. Speaking of which, the Ferrari does have the lead, and it's the Dodge who's in second right now. But they are bouncing off the walls a little bit, and the Corvette tries to pass him. But the Dodge manages to block him going around that turn, and now the Ferrari has a decent-sized lead. And now they approach that jump, and they go completely upside down again, and they just fell short of the finish line. Someone will have to bump them across. And the Corvette managed to do it, and the Corvette also finished in second. I believe that will mean the Ferrari and the Corvette will move on. As for the Mustang, they didn't even finish in that race, and I believe he and the Dodge will not be moving on to the finals for today. The last finals before the grand finals, actually. And look at that, they almost pulled it off again, but they did need a little bit of a push that time around. And it will be the Corvette and the Ferrari moving on. We now have our last group before the grand finals will start. We will have the Corvette, the Hot Tub, the Ferrari, and the Tacoma race each other. Let's see what happens. Race number 1, the Tacoma and the Ferrari are out in front right now. And it looks like the Corvette is trying to push the Ferrari so that he can grab second place. So far successful. And now the Corvette now has the lead. They managed to go from third to first somehow in that transition. But the Ferrari is right behind him trying to pass him up again. And the Corvette ends up going sideways, and now all four are staying relatively close together. The Hot Tub is trying to catch up now, managing to pass the Tacoma. And now they go over this hill with a little bit of a party, actually, for the lack of a better word, and the Ferrari somehow managed to finish in first. Look at this. They clashed in mid-air, and the Ferrari was pushed forward enough, I guess, that they managed to take first place in that race. And the Hot Tub managed to finish in second, the Corvette in third, and the Tacoma in fourth. Now, I still think this could be anyone's game based on how that race went. But the Ferrari and the Hot Tub are now in the front two spots. And they go around that turn. The Ferrari did have the inside, but the Hot Tub managed to take the lead. And they caused the Ferrari to lose some momentum, but now the Ferrari and the Corvette are closing in fast. They're trying to find some way to gain enough speed to not only catch up to Hot Tub, but find a way to smoothly pass them without losing speed. But they actually have to catch up with them first, and the Hot Tub goes into the air, manages to stay on their feet this time, and ends up going backwards across the finish line in first. Meanwhile, what happened to the Ferrari? They were in second, and now we don't see them. They went over the side. I could have sworn they made it over that jump, but I guess they didn't. Let's take a look. Oh, it looked like they tried to save themselves by catching the lip on the way down. But the way the momentum carried them, they went over the side. With a non-finish, their odds of moving on just greatly decreased. And now the Hot Tub is in a much better position compared to the others. The Ferrari finishing in first the first time, it definitely helps them because they are still tied for second in points. So their chances didn't decrease as much as I initially thought. But they will need to stay away from flying off the track, which could be difficult. Right now the Corvette is in front of the Hot Tub though, and the Hot Tub is actually closing the gap alongside the Ferrari right behind him. So far the Corvette does not have enough of a lead to maintain it if they slow down. They have a nice jump, but they land on their backs, and they manage to spin around in such a way where they had the Hot Tub force themselves to push the Corvette forward, finishing in first. Meanwhile, the Tacoma wasn't so lucky. Meanwhile, the Ferrari actually did a little bit of grinding and managed to stay on the track this time. But the Tacoma, something caused them to lose all their speed as they approach the finish. Oh, it looks like they bumped into the Ferrari, who stopped him from finishing. That is a really risky move. You generally do not want to do that, because you could risk them passing you and losing all your points for that race. But leading into heat number 4, the Corvette has 10, the hot tub has 11, the Ferrari has 7, and the Tacoma only has 3. So the Tacoma is essentially out at this point, but they can still affect how the other 3 will finish here. Right now, all 4 are staying relatively close together, but the Tacoma is falling behind just a little bit while the other 3 are fighting first place. Right now, Corvette does have the lead, but the other 2 are nudging into him constantly. And now they go over this hill. All 3 of them managed to stay on their feet, but the Ferrari lost enough speed that the hot tub and the Corvette got in front of them. So I believe it'll be the Corvette and the hot tub moving on. We will have to double check the scores in just a moment. This almost feels like a rarity when you see all 4 racers finish, especially on their wheels. And it will be the Corvette and the hot tub moving on. So now we have our Grand Finals roster set. Thank you all so much for watching. We'll see you for the start of the Grand... Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have made it to the Grand Finals, and this will be the first day for it. The other half of this roster will race in the next video, but for now, we will cover the first half. And the first group of that half is the Viper, the Pocket Bikester, the Mitsubishi Eclipse, and the Audacious. Here we go, the Grand Finals have now begun. Right now it is the Mitsubishi Eclipse with the slight edge, but he does have the outside lane. But he does manage to grab the lead. But here comes the Pocket Bikester, who's coming up on his tail and getting in on the inside. Manages to grab the lead away from the Mitsubishi. And the Mitsubishi is now trying to play catch up, but it looks like he got snagged on a piece of the track and he slowed down significantly. And now the Pocket Bikester is way out in front. And now he approaches the infamous hump, manages to stay on his feet, albeit sideways for a second, and he finishes in first. Meanwhile, the Viper manages to sneak through and grab second place. The top 2 of each group that shows up will move on. We will not have a finals round, as that will be saved for the ultimate finals on the last day. So the 2 that move on here, they will automatically be in the ultimate finals, whereas the other 2, their journey will end here. And right now things are in favor for the Pocket Bikester and the Viper. And I will also point out, I don't think we had a single undefeated racer in this entire tournament. Right now the only title that we can give out to somebody is the fastest racer, which I believe still belongs to the Batmobile, who got a time under 16 seconds on day 3. In this race, however, the Mitsubishi Eclipse is out in front, but here comes the Viper yet again. Now he's trying to hold it from the Viper. Can he do it? The Viper's coming in on the inside, but the Mitsubishi Eclipse blocks him, and now the Bikester is right on his tail, and the Mitsubishi flips over. And he almost manages to stop the Bikester and the Viper from passing him despite being upside down. Meanwhile, the Audacious did not finish. The way those vehicles were positioned, the Mitsubishi Eclipse almost managed to finish in first regardless of that. But the Bikester managed to sneak his way around at the last moment, allowing him to get 2 consecutive wins. One more and he will move on to the ultimate finals automatically. Here we go, race number 3, and the Pocket Bikester is in the front lane alongside the Viper. But now the Mitsubishi and the Viper have a slight edge, and they are taking full advantage of it, cutting off the Bikester and the Audacious, who both lose some momentum going around that turn. And now the Mitsubishi is trying to pass the Viper this time, whereas it was the other way around the previous time. And he actually almost managed to pull it off, but the Viper managed to block him around that turn, and now they go into the hump, and a very clean landing by both racers. And they both managed to stay on their feet, but the Mitsubishi Eclipse stopped short, and the Pocket Bikester managed to nudge him forward, and then the Audacious nudged the Bikester forward. But in doing so, the Audacious did not finish. That was a bit of a chain reaction and a wonderful jump by those two. But the bikester caught his back end on the railing on the way down, causing him to lose some speed and momentum in the process. But look at this, the Viper manages to cross, but then the Eclipse stopped, who got pushed forward by the bikester, and then the bikester got pushed forward. So now we have one race left for this group. Two racers are about to end their journey here. And it looks like it will at least be the Audacious who will join him in the loser circle. We will see in a moment. But as we get around that turn, it is the Viper out in front, and the Audacious is actually right behind him. The Audacious time in this tournament is pretty much over, but he does want to end strong if possible. But the Viper keeps pulling away, and now the other two are caught up to Audacious. The Viper is trying to stay straight as he approaches the jump, lands relatively well, and manages to finish in first. So the Viper will be moving on, and the bikester managed to catch up and do the infamous nose block to keep the Audacious from passing him. Meanwhile, the Mitsubishi Eclipse landed upside down. That may be his ultimate downfall in this tournament. Let's take another look. He actually almost did a full forward roll. That would have been a first for this tournament as far as I can remember. But so far, I think the Batmobile still has the fastest time. And the Viper and the Pocket Bikester will be moving on to the Ultimate Finals. And now for the second group, which has our Mustang, the Paradox, the Cadillac Sienne, and the Nissan Titan. Now this is a very, very interesting group. The Nissan Titan, for one, I remember commenting how he was so low to the ground, I didn't think he would do that well. But they're here in the Grand Finals. Meanwhile, the Cadillac Sienne had one of the most epic saves I've ever seen in a tournament, where they almost went clear over the side, but somehow managed to get a nice little bounce to get back on the track and finish in first place for that race. And now here they are in first yet again, with the Paradox right behind them. They go up the hill, both of them staying relatively close to the ground, but the Paradox passes them after they get over that hill. And the Nissan Titan manages to finish in third, and the Mustang finishes in fourth. This is only the first race, so anything can still happen. It almost looked like the Mustang barely had enough speed to get around that turn. And the Paradox almost ended up finishing in second, but they managed to get a burst of speed near the end, allowing them to pass the Cadillac. So now the Paradox is out in front, and the Cadillac Sienne in second. Will the Cadillac be able to move on again, or will their luck run out? Right now the Paradox is out in the lead, and the Nissan Titan almost managed to grab second, but he was nudged to the side, but I think that was the Cadillac again. But now with the Paradox out in front, the other racers will have to catch up to him. But it is a much closer gap than some of these races we've seen. And the Paradox is now approaching the last turn. He stayed relatively straight this entire time. Can he stay that way? He fishtails and he flips over on his hood. And now the Cadillac passes him for first place. And it's the Mustang that actually managed to finish in second that time, whereas the Paradox got stuck with third. And I don't think the Nissan Titan finished. I think they have to get at least half of their vehicle over the actual line. I don't think they're going to give that to them, but we'll have to see. The Paradox had a nice, clean airtime, but they had an interesting landing going down on the hill, and they flipped over as a result. And the Cadillac Sienne saw a nice little opening and managed to take it. And the Paradox actually almost got pushed forward in front of the Mustang, but it was not enough, and no, they will not give it to the Titan. Here we go into heat number 3. The Cadillac Sienne has 8, the Nissan Titan has 2, the Mustang has 4, and the Paradox has 7. Because of that second place finish, the Mustang is still in this. Can they take full advantage of that opportunity? Right now they are battling with the Cadillac Sienne, who are now both of them trying to catch up to the Paradox. I guess the large wheels in the back have been serving the Paradox well so far. And now they have a decent sized lead as they go into the turn yet again. They go up the hill. And that may be, once again, one of the smoothest jumps we've seen. Staying relatively straight and landing on their feet. Meanwhile, I believe that's the Mustang on their back. And the Nissan Titan manages to find their way around. A very unlucky result after getting back into this race. Let's see exactly what happened. The Paradox had a beautiful jump. Wait, was that the Cadillac Sienne or was that the Mustang? The cars are very similar in design and color that it was actually kind of hard to tell. But despite being so far behind, the Nissan Titan managed to finish in third after all that. I believe that's the Mustang actually that ended up upside down. So they did relatively well up until that jump. So despite getting their hopes up in that previous race, their hopes have gotten dashed yet again, and it looks like it'll be the Paradox and the Cadillac Sienne moving on. This race right here will ultimately decide that. And as we get into this first turn, who will grab the lead? Will it be the Nissan Titan? It will! But now he has the ultimate challenge of staying in front of the other three racers who are nudging him forward, trying to find a way around. So far struggling to do that. The Nissan Titan may not be moving on, but they do want to finish as strong as they can. Meanwhile, the Sienne and the Mustang are fighting, facing each other, as they approach the Nissan Titan, who's first to approach the hill. And all three of them managed to stay on their feet. I don't know if the Paradox did, actually. No, he managed to stay on his feet. It looked like he flipped over going through that jump. And between the Cadillac and the Mustang, I'm not sure who took second place. We'll double check that replay. I think the Cadillac might have had a slight edge. He did. He will take second place and he will join the Paradox in the Ultimate Finals. Here is the first half of that roster. We have now filled out the first half of the Ultimate Finals for this tournament, and now today we will fill out the second half. Here comes the first group hoping to do just that. We have the Vendetta, the Way Too Fast, the Batmobile, and the Horseplay. The Way Too Fast certainly was living up to their name, but now they have to go up against the Batmobile, who at this point in time, as far back as I can remember, they still hold the fastest time in this tournament so far, clocking in a 15.6692, I believe was the number. And so far, no one else, not even the Batmobile, has been able to break 16 seconds since. In this race right now, though, it is the Horseplay who's currently out in front. They are struggling a little bit to stay facing forward, but now they're going into that infamous hill, and they stay facing forward, finishing in first in the first race for this half of the Grand Finals, and the Batmobile finishing in third. I like how we have a little replay on this jump here so we can see how everyone did. And for the most part, it looks like everyone was able to stay not only on their wheels, but on the ground, barely going airborne, if at all. So now the Horseplay is out in front, and the Batmobile is struggling in third so far. But we've seen so many racers go back and forth in points. Sometimes they don't even finish, and it's usually because of that infamous jump near the end. So let's see if that comes into play with this group. Right now the Way Too Fast is out in front, and the Batmobile is ahead of the other two. But now they're all bunching together, and they're trying to pass the Way Too Fast, and the Batmobile is closest to doing so, trying to find a way around. Almost had it, but got pushed up onto the railing and slowed down significantly. And now the Way Too Fast has a much bigger lead, and here they go into the hill. Staying on the ground, staying facing forward, and finishing in first. A wonderful finish for Way Too Fast. But what will happen with the other three? it looks like, I think that's Horseplay and then the Batmobile. Or is that the Vendetta, actually? We have a non-finisher. Let's see which one it was. That is the Vendetta, I believe. From the top, it was kind of hard to tell for me. But the Way Too Fast had the clear win there. And second, oh, actually, all of them. All the other three almost struggled to get around that last turn. Thankfully, two of them did. But that one was not so lucky. And despite being called Way Too Fast, they still can't take Batmobile's fastest time away. The Batmobile is struggling a little bit. They finished in third yet again. They have to pick up the pace if they want to keep their time in these finals alive. Right now, the person with the most points is Way Too Fast, currently at 8. And the Batmobile is trailing at 4, whereas Horseplay, who actually is the one who did not finish. See, like I said, it is a little bit hard to tell. It is the Horseplay who did not finish in that second race. So they will stay at 5 points, and Vendetta caught back up with 4. So everyone else is now fighting for second place, while Way Too Fast is currently holding on to first. They get a nice little jump, a little shaky on the landing, but they do manage to finish in first again, which is great for them. And the Vendetta finished in second. I made sure to get it right that time. And the Batmobile yet again finishes in third. And the Horseplay is clear off the track. This jump, I'm sure, will show how that happened. Oh, wow, that is... I don't know what to call that, a smart play, a dirty play, or what? But the Vendetta actually stopped on top of the hill, and I think that influenced where the Vendetta went as they got into the air, and they went off track. So the Horseplay would actually stay at 5 points yet again. Hopefully I'm saying the names right at the right times, because sometimes I end up swapping them, and I deeply apologize if I'm doing that. But the Batmobile has 6, the Horseplay has 5, the Vendetta has 7, and the Way Too Fast has 13, so the Way Too Fast is already going to be moving on to the Ultimate Finals. And the Batmobile, while still having a shot, is still down by a point, so they will have to finish in front of the Vendetta if they want to move on. But right now, it is the Horseplay out in front right now, and they will finish in first. And the Way Too Fast will finish in second, the Batmobile in third. Meanwhile, the Vendetta, who needed to finish in front of the Batmobile, barely crosses the line. I think that will count, because I think you have to have at least half of your vehicle over the finish line in order for it to count. We may actually have a tiebreaker on this. I'm not sure what's going to happen here. We'll have to double check the rules in a second. Or at least the points, for sure. But the Batmobile managed to finish in third every time, and that consistency may have actually kept him in this race. We'll have to see. No, the Batmobile is cut short because the Horseplay, despite not finishing twice, managed to grab first 2 times, and they will move on instead of the Batmobile. But now we have the second group. 2 of these racers will move on to the Ultimate Finals, and 2 of them will be cut short. Right now, though, despite the fact that the Batmobile is out, I believe they still have the fastest time in the tournament so far. So as long as nobody beats it, they can at least leave this tournament with some sort of title. But now we have the 65 Mustang, the Corvette, the Chevelle, and the Hot Tub in this competition. The Hot Tub may be the strangest racer, as they have an actual hot tub on their vehicle. But they are falling behind. The Mustang, however, had a beautiful jump, and they finished in first. Followed closely by, I believe that was the Corvette, and the Chevelle went off the track, as did the Hot Tub, actually. It's common that we've had 1 or 2 racers not finish because of that hill. but we rarely had two go off the track like that. The Chevelle seems to have actually ridden on the back of the Corvette for a second, and they fell off, and then the hot tub took a nosedive. That was a brutal ending for that race for them. So we have two non-finishers in that first race. That really helps the Mustang and the Corvette. And the Mustang is out in front right now, going around that first turn. They are trying to keep the Chevelle from passing them. Meanwhile, the hot tub is trailing in third, and the Corvette, who finished well in that first race, is so far in last in this one. The Mustang is trying to do anything they can to represent their fellow Mustangs as they go into this hump here, up into the air, and they spin around, but they manage to face forward yet again, almost anyway, and they cause a traffic jam where only the Chevelle may finish. But as I say that, the Corvette comes around and pushes the Mustang across, and the hot tub, I'm not sure they're going to give that to them or not. Well, we almost only had one finisher in that race. Well, we had two now, possibly three. We'll see what the judges think in the booth. The Corvette started off strong, but then started to slow down in this race and ended up not finishing at all. Now, the Mustang stopped the Chevelle almost entirely, but the Chevelle had enough speed, and the Mustang got nudged across, and they are going to give a third place finish to the hot tub. That is a weird sentence to say, but I'm going to roll with it. So now, because of that third place finish, the hot tub has 2, the Chevelle has 5, the Corvette has 3, and the Mustang has 8. They are the only racer in this group right now to have finished each time. And right now the Chevelle is out in front. This is a close race overall, as all 4 are staying relatively close together. The Chevelle is trying to pull away, but then they go completely sideways around that turn. Now all 4 are right on top of each other. Now it's the Mustang who has the lead, and the hot tub looks to pass him. But then the Mustang spins around and slows them all down. And the other 3 almost get stuck on the hill as the Mustang finishes going backwards, staying off the walls entirely, and the hot tub manages to sneak into second. And it looks like we will still have a non-finisher after all that, as the Corvette did not have the speed to go up that hill. After all that, we had one non-finisher, and the other 3 managed to pull it off. It looked like they were going to give it another attempt, but did not have the speed to do so. That was a smooth finish by the Mustang, who stayed off the walls almost entirely in that last stretch. But now the Mustang is in a great position to move on, currently holding on to 13 points, whereas the Chevelle is in second with 7, and the hot tub in 5, and the Corvette only with 3. So really, the Corvette could still move on if they finish well enough and the others don't. But so far, they are in last, while the Chevelle is way out in front. And the hot tub and the Mustang are trying to catch back up. The Mustang currently in second, with the hot tub bumping into them. The Chevelle going around the last turn, going up the hill, almost sideways, and they get on their side for a second. But they manage to correct themselves and still finish in second after all that, and the Mustang will finish in first. Let's see who's going to move on to the Ultimate Finals out of this group. The Chevelle almost did a little dance near the end there, sliding on their side for a second, then popping up only to land back on their wheels. Let's take a look at the total points. It will be the Mustang and the Chevelle moving on. So now we have our roster for the Ultimate Finals, and the Batmobile still has the fastest time in this tournament. Gentlemen, one of these racers is about to win it all. Welcome to the Ultimate Finals, and we are going to jump right into it with our first group, which has the Viper, Way Too Fast, Pocket Bikester, and Horseplay. These 4 fought tooth and nail to get to this point, and now 2 of them are going to move on to the last round of this entire tournament. Let's see who they will be. Right now it is Horseplay and the Pocket Bikester out near the front, while Way Too Fast and Viper, actually, are fighting in the back. Right now, Pocket Bikester is trying to catch up to Horseplay as they go around that turn. He bumps into the back of him. but doesn't quite catch him. Horseplay is still out in front, and now they're heading into the final turn, leading into that infamous jump of this entire tournament. Horseplay handles it pretty well, and Pocket Bikeser actually does a bit of a nose manual. A good little skateboarding term for you skateboarding fans out there. Meanwhile, Way Too Fast and Viper finish in 3rd and 4th, respectively. Yeah, I didn't see too many racers in this tournament slide on the front of their car going after that jump. That is definitely a little bit of a style point for them. And they finish with a 17.62. Ladies and gentlemen, according to my notes, while the Batmobile is no longer in this tournament, they still have the record for the fastest time throughout this entire tournament, with about a 15.6692, I believe. If you want to go back and see that glorious display of speed, I believe that was done on the 3rd day of the tournament. We're back into this race right now. It is Way Too Fast who was actually out in front this time around. And it looks like that might actually be Viper right behind him. Each pair has swapped positions, and now it is Viper bumping into Way Too Fast going around that turn. Horseplay is trying to catch up, and actually manages to catch up to Viper after he slides sideways, but Way Too Fast now has a much bigger lead. And they go into that jump, almost a beautiful landing, starts spinning sideways and facing backwards. The other 3 racers try to catch him, unable to do so. It almost looks like each racer's position has flipped between these 2 races. And we're going to see how that affects the scores. Yeah, I will say that jump has been a massive game changer for this entire tournament. Some racers start off really well, but once they get to that jump, they start falling behind. Here we go into heat number 3. And they are off. Right now it is Viper and Way Too Fast out in front. And what? Oh, wait a minute! Out of nowhere, Horseplay just loses a lot of speed. What happened there? They are now way far behind compared to the other 3 who are practically right next to each other. Right now it is Viper out in front with the Pocket Bikes are bumping into him, and then Way Too Fast trying to push past both of them. And Viper somehow manages to block both red racers. And now he's getting a slightly bigger lead as the race progresses. They go around that last turn, heading into the jump, and they stay relatively close to the ground, and they stay straight, keeping off of the walls. A very clean finish. Meanwhile, Pocket Bikeser wasn't so lucky, finishing upside down. I'm not entirely sure if he finished 2nd or 3rd. We're going to have to double check that. And while I'm thinking about it, ladies and gentlemen, we have heard your comments, and I believe many people have been saying how the way each racer starts at the beginning of the race isn't always consistent, or fair in some cases. While that hasn't been implemented until this video, it's going to be further implemented, as far as I know, for future tournaments, should races start out that way again. Thank you for your pointers. But now we have 1 race left. Right now, the Pocket Bikeser has 7. The Viper has 9. The Way Too Fast also has 9. And the Horseplay has 8. It is very much still anyone's game, but the Pocket Bikeser has some work to do if they want to stay in this tournament, because right now they are towards the back in 3rd, so they definitely need to keep it going. And the Viper currently has the lead. They go into that last turn, they go up the hill, and go completely off the track. This could be the opening that the Pocket Bikeser needed, as they now finish in 1st and Way Too Fast finishes in 2nd. Both blue racers do not finish, as the Horseplay winds up upside down. Yet another example of that one jump changing absolutely everything. And they didn't just go off the track, they flew off practically. They were practically up against the wall back there. Something about the way they hit the edge on the way down caused them to flip and go way off track. But the 2 red racers are the only ones that finished. And it really helps, as they, as a result, will be the ones to move on to the last round. So here we go for the 2nd group now. The Cadillac CM, the Mustang, the Faradox, and the Chevelle. Here we go. The Chevelle and the Faradox are out in front right now, but look at this. The Mustang is pushing the Chevelle forward, and now he's in 2nd. Right now it is very close between the Chevelle and the Mustang. However, the Faradox is not too far behind. And now the Chevelle is pulling away But the Paradox is trying to find his way around the Mustang, so far unable to do so. But the Chevelle is going around the last turn, and here comes the Mustang out of nowhere trying to catch him. They both go airborne, and the Chevelle goes off track, allowing Paradox to finish in second. And the Cadillac Sienne might have just gotten a break with that, and they now finish in third as a result. We're in the Ultimate Finals, and we've already seen two people fly off the track at least once. I don't even know if they hit the railing on the way down, but they definitely hit the posts after getting to ground level. That might have been a little extra painful, actually. You can't quite see them flying off the track from this angle, but I assure you, it was brutal. Finishing with a 17.1, they still got to pick up the pace a little bit. But for now, the Mustang has a lead in points, a very advantageous position at this point in time. You just need to be in the top two to move on to the last round, but once you get there, there's only one winner. But as we begin the second race, three of our races are right next to each other, and now it is the Chevelle out in front again, but this time the Paradox starts off in second. And now he's trying to close that gap going around that turn. So far, it's been getting actually bigger. But now the Chevelle spins sideways, and the Paradox is trying to get past him, but the Chevelle has been causing a traffic jam. And now all four of them are relatively close together. The Cadillac is starting to fall behind slightly, but no one is even moving that fast anymore. And they all stay on the track as a result, thankfully. And the Paradox blocks the Mustang from passing him. Another sweep denied. We have gone through this entire tournament without any undefeated racers. None of them even got into the Grand Finals, much less the Ultimate Finals. And now let's see how these positions change everything. The Mustang still has the lead in points, but now that gap has gotten much, much smaller. Because they have 7, but now that the Chevelle stayed on the track and finished in first, they now have 5. The Paradox has 6, and the Cadillac has 3. Into race number 3 now. The Mustang now starts off with the lead, but the Chevelle is bumping into him. Will this affect them going around the turn? So far, no. The Mustang actually has a slightly bigger lead, and both of them are fishtailing off the walls a little bit right now, allowing the other racers to catch up. Here comes the Cadillac, passing the Chevelle, now trying to do the same with the Mustang. But that turn prevented it from happening. They both go airborne, and the Mustang holds on to the lead, finishing in first yet again. And somehow the Chevelle, despite staying on the track and staying on their wheels, still did not finish in that race. We'll have to see what happened, because it looked like they still had a lot of speed for the most part. But it looks like the little bout with the Paradox caused them to bounce off the wall and lose a bunch of speed. That pretty much dashes their chances of moving on to the last round. Meanwhile, the Paradox now has 8 points. The Cadillac has 6. The Mustang has 12. And the Chevelle has 5. So things are definitely leaning in the favor of the Mustang and the Paradox. The Paradox, speaking of which, is currently holding the lead. And it looks like they might be able to hold on to it, but here comes the Chevelle, trying to pass them, but ends up bumping into the back of them. The momentum has shifted slightly, but now the Chevelle is making another attempt, once again unsuccessful. They both go airborne. The Paradox has a slightly cleaner landing, and they win that race. The Chevelle does finish in second. I don't think it's going to be enough to move on, however. A couple beautiful moments in the air for those two. The Mustang wasn't quite as smooth in terms of flying, but they did get back on the track and keep going. Let's see who moves on. It's the Paradox and the Mustang. We now have the final group of this entire tournament. One of the 4 racers you see on screen right now is about to win it all. No one has beaten the the Batmobile's fastest time yet. But one of these 4 could possibly do it. Even if they don't, one of them is about to take home the title. And right now it is way too fast out in front, and he managed to block the other 3, causing them to lose some speed and push him forward. But it looks like it also cost him a bit of speed, and no one is moving supremely fast right now. They are going downhill, which allows them to pick up some speed at the moment. And now the Paradox, going backwards, actually manages to use the momentum shift to his advantage and take the lead going into the jump. And now they are driving towards the finish line, looking at their opponents in the eye, and they managed to take the first win. So now the one in favor to win the entire tournament is the Paradox. Granted, as we've seen, anything can happen still. So hold on to your hats. And notice that big slowdown near the beginning caused them to finish with a 19.67. I am not sure what caused the Batmobile to get such a fast time way back in day 3, but no one, not even the Batmobile themselves, were ever able to replicate it. But here we go into the second race. Right now the Paradox has the lead in points. Will they be able to hold on to that? So far they are actually starting in the back of the pack, while the Pocket Bikester takes a decent sized lead. So far he's doing relatively well. This will help him in case they get a rough landing going off that jump at the bottom. And so far they are staying pretty straight, bouncing off the walls only a little bit every once in a while. They go into the air and way off the track. It looked like they might have nicked the side on the way down, but that was not pleasant. Meanwhile, the Paradox also rolled over, but they managed to get back on their wheels, keep going, and finish in first yet again. And here comes Way Too Fast finishing in second. And what happened to the Pocket Bikester? Oh no, wait, the Mustang finished in third. Was it the Pocket Bikester that flew off? There's just so much going on, I keep losing track of what's happening when. But it was the Pocket Bikester that flew off. It was definitely a beautiful jump, but an ugly landing. Let's see what happened to the Paradox though, because they did spin around, also balancing on their nose for just a moment, but they somehow managed to roll over back onto their wheels and cross the finish line first. And here comes the Mustang. I don't know if this will help them at this point, but every little bit does help. So maybe they can pull off a surprise that we just don't see coming. But they will need to pick up the pace. Because right now the Paradox has 2 wins under their name in this group, the last group of this tournament, and they just need one more win to secure the overall victory. So here we go. This race right here could be the one to decide it all if the Paradox finishes in first. So far it looks like they might be starting near the back again. This is looking a little familiar now as the Pocket Bikester is right out in front. But as we've seen many times over throughout this entire tournament, just because you start out in front does not mean you'll finish that way. In fact, sometimes you don't finish, and it's all thanks to that one jump. He's hoping to go over it this time a little bit smoother, and it was a very nice landing. They did flip around, but they do finish in first. And the Mustang in second. And where is the Paradox? The Paradox will finish in fourth if they finish at all, because the Way Too Fast finished in third, and the Paradox does at least finish, but finishing in fourth may just dash all their chances, if not greatly diminish them. They just needed one more first place finish, but finishing in fourth might make all the difference. They managed to actually flip backwards as they were going over that hill. So at least they show some good signs of control. And the Pocket Bikester definitely needed that win after not finishing in the previous race. But the question is, what position will that put them in overall points? The Paradox now has 11. The Mustang has 6. Let's see what the other two have. Yeah, the Mustang has 6, the Pocket Bikester has 7, and the Way Too Fast has 8. So the Paradox still has the lead in points. They just need to do well here, and they could win it all. And right now they are out in front. They just need to finish in front of the other 3. This race is going to decide everything for this entire tournament. It's all leading up to this. And right now, the Paradox is right in front of the Pocket Bikester, who's trying to push his way past him. Could not quite do it. The Paradox has a clean jump over the hill, and the Paradox will be your overall winner. A champion has been crowned. Ladies and gentlemen, valiant effort by all racers, but the Paradox comes out on top, and the Way Too Fast, unfortunately, does not finish on the last race of this tournament. But now we have a winner crowned, and we will see who will win a prize as a result. A 17.33 to finish everything off. Not bad at all. But there you go, the Paradox is your overall champion of the Widowmaker tournament. Congratulations to Ryan Fisher 7233 and Vapor Diecast Racing for picking the winner. Next tournament.